Hey, 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 there you are.
Hey, Mo, what's good?
How
What's
you doing?
good?
How you doing? You doing good?
Good, yeah. How about
Good, good.
you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
I've been waiting for this day, to be honest with you, because I've
You
been
know
waiting
what?
for this dude. Yeah,
Me
I got.
too.
Look at mine. Mine's prettier. I've been
Now,
waiting. I've been waiting for this dude for since 2014. That long. He's a hard guy to get up with. But
yeah,
go ahead and talk about who our guest is this week.
yeah, y'all. So today's episode is an edition, and it's the My Life series. And I know that Steve had posted it on his Facebook page saying he doesn't know what the topic is, but well, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But that rodeo clown that he mentioned on his post, I want to know if that's fact or fiction, and I'm sure there's other people who want to know as well. So why don't you guys go ahead and get your favorite Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust cigar? I got the Stillwell Star, and Michael does too. Get a drink, and we'll be right back, y'all.
See you in a minute. Hey,
Hey,
we're back.
okay,
We're back.
okay.
What's good, folks? What's good?
I'm ready.
You ready? I'm ready. I'm
I'm
ready.
ready. So I just want to go, Michael. I don't know why it's echoing. Um, there you go. We want to welcome everyone back, and we want to welcome all of Steve Saka fans out there. Thank you so much for your time on a Sunday. I know there was one shout. I want to say a shout out to the one that says, "Well, there's worse ways that you can spend a Sunday." Thank you for watching. So we are going to go ahead and start this My Life series. This is the fifth one that we've done. We've had Carlito on here, Sean Williams. We've had David Gomes of Escobar Cigars. We've had Pedro. And now we have Steve Saka of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. And also we have Arlene and Casey back for this episode. So let's go ahead and bring them on.
Woo!
Hey, what's good, young lady?
Yay!
Hey, I
Yes,
miss those faces.
miss those faces too.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Now, what
I
is
heard
it,
you
you
guys say.
guys?
I heard you guys say you were smoking the Stillwell. That's what I chose today too. What do you have, Arlene?
I
Yeah, what
have
you got?
the Lancero. And Lord have mercy, I was trying to pronounce the name. And,
We're gonna let him tell us.
Louis reminded me that it's an acronym. And
It
I
is
didn't
an
even
And we're
know
gonna let
the
him tell
acronym.
us.
I was like,
We'll let him tell us what it stands for.
No, NLMTHA.
You
And
cracked
I
me up with
really
that.
was trying to pronounce that shit, right?
You were trying to figure out how it was cursing, motherfucker.
I was like, what
He
the
said
fuck?
You was trying to figure it out.
Louis said it stands for "Now Leave Me the Hell Alone." I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, of course Steve would
Yes.
come up with
See,
that.
I
shit.
wanted him to tell the people why he like the name because I want to hear him say, "Now leave me the hell alone."
You still can.
He'll
You
say
still
it.
can.
He'll
Hey, but
say
listen,
it.
we're going to be very limited with Steve's time today. So,
Yeah.
ladies, what we need to do is spend that first half hour ish grilling him in regards to whatever questions you have, and we need to open up the forum early so that based on however many questions we have, we'll be able to go over those questions and be respectful of his time.
That's
Okay.
right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. Let's see if we can get it in. So let's bring Steve on.
All right, Steve, come on.
Steve.
Two things. My time is your time, so we don't have to rush. If you guys got better shit to do, and that's the reason you said that, I got no time at all, so we got to get through this.
Oh, well, shit. He's gone.
Number two, yeah. Now leave me the hell alone. Yeah. That's what I mean. Leave me alone.
Oh my God. I was trying to pronounce the acronyms. I was like, what the hell
Come on,
is
what
this?
kind of rock are you living under that you don't
It was
realize?
like number
I mean, Arlene, come on. If you were like 96, I'd give you a pass on this, but you look a little too young to not know what a hashtag is.
But I did hear you one time talking about this Lancero that you did not want to create.
Look, everyone that knows me. I'm not a Lancero fan.
I know.
I have a variety of reasons why that people have heard 100 times. But look, it's the Lancero audience is very small, but to their credit, they're very, very fucking vociferous.
That would be me. That would be this motherfucker right here.
They badger and they badger and they badger. And so I've made exactly 2 Lanceros in my life, right? The first one was the L40 when I was with Drew Estate.
Yeah.
And the second one was the Now Leave Me Hell Alone. And as fate would have it, they're probably the 2 best-selling Lanceros in America over the last 10 years. I mean, it's really I don't know how many L40s Drew Estate still sells. I'm pretty sure they're still selling a lot of them. And I sell a boatload of these. And so it's kind of funny that a cigar that I personally not a big fan of, don't like the Vitola. There's a lot of reasons. I still seem to be able to make one that doesn't taste like dog shit. So
oh my God.
That's
it's amazing, Steve. Like, it's amazing. It's just hard to find.
Yes.
So what, an amazing man?
I don't think Steve's made a bad cigar. I mean, it's like I have this is the Sobremesas Brulee Blue. Delicious. The Naka Tamale, delicious. And then, of course, this is the Mi Querida Triqui Traca.
Very good. Well, you do know the job is to not make sucky cigars, right? You do understand that. I mean, it kind of is the gig.
But there are some out there. Just saying.
There are some shitty cigars.
So we're going to go ahead and start with Arlene with her question.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for spending your Sunday with us. I know you could be doing so many other things, but you're here with us, and what a privilege to have you.
Binge watching The Housewives of Atlanta right now.
There you go.
Something different. Yeah.
So this is, as you know, this is my life series. So we want to give our viewers a glimpse of who Steve Saka really is. We want them to connect with you on a personal level so that, I mean, we already enjoy your cigars, but, you know, we want them to connect with you so that they get to really know you and really, really, really appreciate what they're smoking and think about you when, you know, when they're smoking it. So we're going to go back to your childhood days. No, I'm just kidding.
Damn.
I'm just kidding.
You going way the fuck back.
We don't have 5 hours. So so let's speed forward and let's go. Okay. You were originally born and raised in New York, correct?
Yeah. I was born outside of Rochester, and Victor lived in that area until I was 9. And then my dad took a job in East Texas and we moved there.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Texas from the age of 9 till I left for the service. I enlisted when I was 17.
Wow. Okay. That's what I was going to ask you. Did you enlist like right out of high school? So yeah.
I actually enlisted while I was still in high school.
Wow. Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit about your background in the Navy. What did you specialize in?
Well, I enlisted in Navy because I had aspirations of going to the academy, and I was too lazy in school to qualify. Amazing SAT scores, but I was the kid that was in all the advanced placement classes that would always eke by with a C just so I could stay in them, and never did more than what was necessary. I've always been very efficient at that in my life, you know, never to I'm good at pushing where the things that need to be pushed, and I'm good at ignoring the things that can be ignored. And foolishly, at the age of what, I guess 15, 16, 17, I decided that I could ignore those AP courses, which I shouldn't have been. And that put me in a position where if I wanted to go to the academy, enlisting was the best way, because they take, at that time, I don't know what the deal is now, but they had a special school in Newport, Rhode Island, that they would take 70 to 80 enlisted men every year and put them in an academy prep. And that was what my intent was. But that all got blown out of the water when I met my wife, Cindy, because I decided I'd rather marry her than be in the Naval Academy. And honestly, in retrospect, I've been married to Cindy for 37 years, so I think I made the right damn choice.
Wow, congratulations. Oh my God, that's a lot.
I don't know if congratulations are in order, but we'll leave that alone. Yeah.
No, you made the right choice on that one, man.
Yeah, I know. She's special, you know, and I certainly had no intention of marrying her. In fact, I was shacking up with a bikini dancer in Virginia Beach at the time. So but
that's
then
awesome.
I met her and I knew instantly. Like, I so knew instantly that I like literally moved out of the bikini chick's apartment like the next Monday. I was like, you know what? This ain't gonna work.
Oh my God. So
Jesus.
What was your background in the Navy, or when did you get into engineering?
I wasn't into engineering. I was a twidge in the Navy. I was an electronics technician. You know, I worked primarily on comm equipment. I was stationed on an old Knox class frigate. I was good, but I wasn't great. You know what I mean? I mean, I was better than most of the idiots around me, but that's not a high bar. And what ended up happening is Cindy got pregnant like within a year. We had a baby, and then of course I was ineligible for the Naval Academy because you couldn't be married at that time. I mean, now you can be of any gender. Now you can be married, but back then you had to be single and you had to be male. That was a prerequisite to go to the academy. So I was then basically opting for an ROTC scholarship. But once she got pregnant the second time, the writing was on the wall.
Steve. My dad was in the Navy as well, and back then they wanted you to be married to the Navy. They wanted you to have all commitments towards them and nothing that was going to sidebar that. So
and that's the way it was. So.
Okay. Well, so I know you mentioned in a couple of your interviews before that you weren't really born into cigars. And in fact, no one in your family smoked cigars.
That's
right?
Correct. Well, oddly enough, my grandfather, my dad was an immigrant from Turkey. So my grandfather grew tobacco in Turkey.
Okay.
But he grew it more to sell it than to use it. And but no, there was nobody. My mom was heavily addicted to Pall Mall, right? So she definitely did her part to promote the tobacco business. 3 packs a day, probably, maybe 4. To be honest with you, she was a chimney. But no, there was no one in my family that was into cigars, either good cigars or bad cigars. There were no pipe smokers. There was none of that. That's something that got added to my life while I was in the Navy.
Okay. So did you start off in the Navy? Did you start off smoking cigarettes, or you just went right into cigars?
No, I maybe have smoked 40 cigarettes in the course of my lifetime. You know, mostly when I was younger and really drunk. I was like, yeah, give me one of those damn things. But I started cigars when I was right around handmade cigar. First one I had was probably when I was about 19. I mean, I smoked some Swisher Sweets down by the river with 3 friends, splitting a pack of Lone Star, you know, but I don't think those.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So how did you really get introduced into the cigar community?
That was so I was in a bubble. So I was like really uber cigar crazy by the late 80s. So in my little tiny world of the stores that I would frequent, I was like the cigar expert, right? And let me tell you how being an expert works. Being an expert basically means you know a little bit more than the other people, and therefore you're an expert. It's just the way it's just kind of set up that way. And it really was when I got an AOL account. And you remember the dial-up modem?
AOL.
And it used to chirp and the whole 9 yards. And there was a small group of cigar smokers that would communicate on AOL.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like 8 people, 9 people. And it was at that point that I realized that I wasn't the only one that was just uber cigar crazy. And that then led me to go to alt.smokers.cigars, which was a Usenet news group. For people in this generation, the best comparison is kind of Reddit. It had a lot of similarities in the way it was structured, but it wasn't easy to get to. You actually had to have some sort of computer knowledge and expertise in order to get to the news groups. And there, that group of 9 people expanded to like 40 people. And then, during the 90s, I mean, at some point, I don't know how many members there were in the end, but there were more than probably 1,000 people, and there were probably a good 350, 400 of us actively chatting back and forth about cigars. And I just kind of, I started doing events, herfs and crawls, and started doing all sorts of meetups, and I started my own taste test review, and I had my own website. And the reason why is because I didn't have a job. I had when I left Texas, I had sold that company, so I had the luxury of not having to work the same way as I had in the past, which gave me a tremendous amount of free time to dick off. And I basically did it online about cigars, and then just doing a whole bunch of different things. So I was really plugged into the internet cigar community at the very early stages. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because I see a lot of things on websites today and things that people say, and where they're really taking things that I wrote, like literally, what has it been, 25 years now? And I literally see it all over the place. It's kind of crazy to see. I mean, yeah, if I was copyright crazy, I should go bonkers.
Right.
But at the same time, it's kind of honoring because, I mean, the intent was to share information, share knowledge,
right,
to expand our appreciation, to enjoy everybody's company. And it really just kind of stemmed from that. And that was that notoriety of being that. And I was that guy. Okay. And I was that guy at a moment when there were no other people. There were no other websites. There were no other blogs. There was nothing. So that really kind of led me to where I had personal relationships with most of the manufacturers. And one of the people that I had a personal relationship was with Lou Rothman. And Lou Rothman graciously extended me my very first actual paying job in the cigar business to work at JR Cigar.
Nice. Nice.
Me and Casey are going to tag team on you, so Casey has a few questions too.
Casey, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Ernie.
Casey.
And is that feedback coming from me? I hear the double echo.
No, I think it's coming from
You were that dude and you were the only dude?
It's her Wi-Fi. You're delayed. Oh.
Let's just say this. What she just said is the most intelligent thing that's going to be said today. So kudos to her. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, I can go into Casey, are you?
No, she's having problems, Arlene. Go ahead.
Well, one of the other questions I think Casey had for you is, you mentioned you wrote a lot of articles, you had a lot of knowledge out there, and
you giving me all the other next questions. All right.
Okay, go ahead, Casey. Go ahead.
So,
there you go.
Lord,
you can't hear me.
Now we can't see you.
Let me have just a little more juice to make this softer.
I need to have a drink.
Me too.
This cigar is so good.
I don't.
Which one are you smoking, Lou? Because it's still
anything going on.
Which one?
The Stillwell Star.
Yeah, but which of the 4? Because they all taste different.
The ones that you sent. This one was the number 1056, the Navy.
That's a Navy blend. The Navy blend. So that has red stowed Virginia that's then Cavendished in a dark rum.
Yeah.
And the rum doesn't actually come in contact with it It actually is put in the cavendishing tray, and when they're doing the cavendishing, it comes up in the vapor, and it ends up basically leaving a little bit of that dark rum saturation, which is it's one of the common traits in a Navy tobacco, is some sort of casing or preparation that has some rum. Some of them, they actually apply rum right to it. Others, they apply the rum directly to the leaf, and then they flash fire it to pull off the alcohol. But it's a very, the Stillwell line is a very peculiar line because it's really 4 different expressions of pipe tobacco, but in a cigar format. So I think it's one that I don't know where it fits, to be honest with you. It's going to be interesting to see if 2 years from now it's popular. You know what I mean? Because it is just so peculiar.
So on your website, you state that this is the only pipe tobacco cigar that's out there.
No. There's other pipe tobacco cigars out there, and others have been tried before. But the difference is, this isn't me taking an existing pipe tobacco and just adding it to a cigar. This is me actually working with the pipe tobacco manufacturer, their head blender, Jeremy Reeves at Cornell and Deal, which is one of the most famous of the American pipe blenders, to create specific tobaccos that were designed for me to ultimately make blends around. So, and the other thing too is most of the pipe tobacco cigars, and I don't mean this in any way to slight them because they're at a much different price point and they're priced accordingly, but no one's ever made one with just all top shelf pipe tobacco materials and cigar materials and treated it like, hey, I want to make a Davidoff quality cigar. It's just going to be different and weird. You know what I mean? A different kind of expression. So there's never been a luxury pipe tobacco cigar in the market.
Nice. Well, I want to get Michael the aromatic one, which is the first one that you have listed on your site.
Right.
It's the one with Black Cavendish because he's a big Black Cavendish.
I mean, the aromatic is the one that's probably the most familiar to most people from a pipe point of view, because those are primarily the pipe tobaccos that are topped with a lot of additional flavors. The aromatic's a weird one. It has it, but it's also very measured and balanced. So maybe I didn't make it sweet enough. Maybe I didn't make it aromatic enough. But as is the case with all the cigars, I always make them for me first, and then I hope people are dumb enough to buy them. And I don't really think about, I don't try to make something for everybody. I just try to make something for me. And if I like it, I hope other people like it too. So, but that is a question with the aromatic. Is the aromatic enough? You know?
Well, I want to get that one from Michael so he can try it. He loves pipe tobacco, and so all 4 expressions that you have are ones that I want to really get for him so that he can smoke them. But this Navy one is very unique.
Yeah, it's definitely different. There's no other way to describe them.
Yeah. Casey, are you ready?
Hell no, she ain't ready. Hey, Steve, I got a quick question.
Dude.
Casey, I told you she wasn't ready. Go ahead, Casey, say something.
No, you're right.
I'm ready.
You ain't ready.
It looks like the people that are like going like this, she's like,
Go ahead,
you know,
Michael.
Okay, gosh.
Go ahead, honey. Nope, it's not working.
it's not.
Okay, well, let's keep going.
Okay, Steve, I want to ask you this real quick, man. So does your, and a probably stupid question, but does your wife, she partake in cigars periodically with you when you're going through trying to develop some of these things? Are you like, babe, tell me what you think?
Steve froze.
Steve froze.
Now Steve froze up. Like, what the fuck?
What the hell is this?
I'm not understanding
No
what
internet.
is going on.
You kind
My Wi-Fi was fine from
All right.
2 o'clock.
Let me try this again. So, first off, my wife does smoke cigars.
Okay.
She used to smoke them very infrequently, but since, look, she's my 50-50 partner in everything, including Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, and she runs the New Hampshire side of things. Don't make any jokes about it. She is the real boss there, and she started smoking cigars more frequently. I don't know that she's smoking one every day, but yesterday we were at an event and she smoked like 5 cigars. So,
Wow.
so she's definitely smoking cigars. To answer your other question, every once in a while I'll ask her how something smells, but almost in all cases, that was with Stillwell Star. I want to know what the room note is on the Stillwells as I was making them, because you know how cigars are; they smell much different to you when you're smoking them
Yeah.
than when you're the person that walks into the room. But
Mm.
I don't let anybody have any opinion about anything. Nobody at the factory gets to try anything. Nobody at the office gets to try anything. I don't give things to consumers. Say, hey, what do you think of this? The reason why is because you make anything and you give it to 5 people, you're gonna get 5 damn opinions, right? It's just the way it is. For some people, it's too strong. For other people, it's too mild. Some people wish it was that, wish it was that. You never end. So when you try to make something that appeals to a very wide audience, you very rarely make anything of interest. And I have this saying, when you make a cigar that everybody likes, you've ultimately made a cigar that nobody loves, right? And so what I do is when you buy a cigar that I am making, it's entirely just what I think it should be. And then what you get to do as a consumer, you get to decide whether you like what I made or you didn't like what I made. It's the same thing. You go to a restaurant, you order something from the chef, he puts it on the table. You don't get to go fucking back there and tell him how to change the ingredient and how he should make it. What you get to decide to do is, I ain't coming to this shit box again because this food sucks. Okay, I'm just gonna take my ass over to someplace else and eat, right? But you don't get to have an opinion about how the food is made. And that's kind of the way I look at it with cigars. I think that consumers have literally not hundreds of options, but thousands of options. Many of them are good. Many of them aren't as good. But I think that when someone smokes my cigars, they like it because they like what my palate brings, what my intuition and how I feel about tobacco and how it should be is really what they're buying into.
Right.
I mean, so for me, it's very important. I always tell people it's kind of like Picasso, amazing artist, Salvador Dali, amazing artist, Rembrandt, amazing artist. If you had all 3 of them share the work on one canvas, what are we looking at? We're just looking at a mess is what we're looking at. We're not looking at art that's 3 times better. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the way I approach it. And look, it's easier to do so, Mike, when you're small, and I don't have to please 40 million people. You know what I mean? I just have to make a few people really, really happy, and they're like, yeah, this is my jam.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your answer in regards to that, man. It just makes me think about, like you said, at the end of the day, you're not going to appease everybody, and you had to make the shit that made you happy, what you did. And I just find it very profound that we have a lot of people out there critiquing shit that have never blended ever in their life. They haven't gone through some
work. It's always easy to be a critic. I mean, look, I see it all the time. Look, I bite my tongue because there's no upside to being
bullshit.
No, I do. I mean, you get really blunt about it. I mean, you got somebody telling you how you don't know how to run your business.
Yeah.
All the time online. But the reality is,
wait, so the Steve that we hear is you biting your tongue?
They've never had a company that was doing $80 million a year in sale. Right. They never had 1,700 employees. Previous job, 1,500 employees. They haven't bought 1 pound of tobacco, much less $75-80 million worth of tobacco.
That's
They're really just talking out their ass. They're just putting their opinion. And look, the beauty of it, everybody has an opinion to share, and it's fine. But the reality is, if you really start to really dive into a lot of it, you really start to realize how paper thin a lot of these people are when it comes to their commentary. And it's one of the reasons why I tend to, and I've changed my approach to this over the years. I like people that, I'm opinionated too, right? I'm a critic. Every time I go to a restaurant, every time I get a booze, right? It just is. But I don't go to the distiller and tell him how to run his business or how to make his booze. I just don't buy his damn booze. You know what I mean?
Right.
And therein lies the difference. Some people feel like they feel like they have the right to just constantly get up in your grill. And honestly, you just kind of feel like just telling them to just take a hike.
Casey, go ahead and mute your background.
Because it's the internet. And if you told everyone that you should tell the fuck off, you're just in a holy war all the time.
Well, you had made a comment. I think it was at I might have been TPE this year. Somebody had come to your booth and basically told you that you had to convince him about your cigar.
And that's what. And let me tell you, Lou, the fact that he didn't know who we are, and the fact that that's what he said didn't bother me. What bothered me was the tone, the whole looking up at the sign and kind of like, you know, just slow rolling it. He was intentionally being a douchebag, and that's what he was doing. And I just don't have to cotton to that. Now, let me say this. You know, that post I put online.
Yes.
That cost me 2 retail accounts.
Oh, wow.
Two retail. Well, one retailer got all up in arms about it. Okay. And he's like, well, I can't do business with a company that's going to talk to a retailer that way.
Oh, wow.
And he talked to another retailer in his area to follow suit. Now, he tried to get a third retailer, but the third retailer told him to pound sand because his shit sells so much. There's no way. And you're just being a pussy. But that's a separate issue. So everything you say online comes with consequences.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't matter. And I've said this many times. If Mother Teresa was on Twitter, she would have an army of haters, and it's Mother Teresa, for God's sakes, right? There is no win. So the only way that you can live in the environment is just stand your ground, be who you are, and understand that you're not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all you can possibly do.
Yeah.
Because there's no amount of tap dancing possible that will satisfy everybody. It's just not feasible.
Right.
And I think it's something that I came to grips with this back in the 90s from being in Usenet. Because we used to have these massive flame wars and all this strife and drama and blah, blah. Never ends. And it never will stop because it's human nature.
Yeah.
I think the general public now, over the last 10 years, they're all starting to get to where I am, where they're realizing that this is a no-win situation. So the best thing you can do is be true to yourself and let the chips fall where the chips fall, because there's no other way you can survive being this public and be constantly trying to dodge the arrows and counter and, you know, everything.
Man, that's something that I had to learn that. I had to learn
And the
that.
other thing too is you got to learn to not take everything like super uber personal, right? You can't, because people are going to say shit online that they're never ever going to say to your face, never in a million years. And look, it hurts. Look, I'm human. I got an ego. I'm like everybody else, right? And you got to look at some of that stuff, and you just gotta say, okay, and you just got to keep walking along. And because if you don't, you just find yourself stagnated. And if you don't find yourself stagnated, you find yourself capitulating. And here's the funny part: once you start to capitulate, the people that love you, they hate the fact that you're capitulating. Them. So it's like you got to be who you are. You got to be comfortable in your skin. You just got to live with it, and that's just the way it's got to be.
So, Steve, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
If you had to redo it all over again, man, from losing those 2 accounts, would you do it the same way?
Fuck yeah, I don't give
a fuck. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we understand that. And there's been times that Louie and I will get out there, and because we have a passion for what we do, and sometimes, you know, people come at us sideways, and, you know, we're going to go and speak the truth, but then we'll get hit on the hip by people in the industry. It's like, hey, Mike, Louie, you know, don't do that. You know, so then we kind of dial it back in, you know.
You just have to find the drum that you want to march to, and just march to it, and just leave it up to other people whether they like what you're laying down or they don't like what you're laying down.
I mean, your response to the guy was it was so on point, just based on, you set the tone, even through your writing, you set the tone, and I felt it as if I was there. And what you said in response to the guy was like,
well, it isn't like I came up with that off the cuff. It isn't the first guy I told that. So different circumstances, you know, but you always, I mean, come on. I deal with thousands and thousands of people every year, right? You do have a few things in your pocket to pull out when you need them, you know? So,
but you know what? That's what made you so
popular. Actually, my favorite conversation at TPE was another retailer that sat across from Dave Lafferty and asked him to, well, tell me about yourself, right? And Dave goes, well, I like long walks on the beach and romance novels, and you know what I mean? It's like, all right, that's a good response. A little bit more lighthearted than.
Right. Okay, so let's try Casey again. Miss Casey.
Can you hear me in the normal voice?
You're
Not
delayed.
really, Casey. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
But
Am
your
I
hair
still
looks lovely.
delayed?
Yes.
A little bit delayed. But get your question out.
Get your question out.
This sucks.
Can we ask your questions for
my goodness.
Let's help her.
All right.
Ask your question.
When you started, Steve, you funded your trips to the factories and fields on your own dime. What made you do that when you learned all the aspects?
Okay, so I think it's like anything you really get into, right? I mean, if you really get into knitting, next thing you know, you're visiting alpaca farms, right? If you really get into booze, you say, hey, I'm going to make a trip to Kentucky because I want to do the Bourbon Trail. And I was really into cigars, and I had the financial means.
My feelings are hurt.
Had the financial means. Now I don't know what we're talking about. You had the financial means to go and start visiting factories and fields and spend time. So as an Uber cigar geek, that was kind of like my thing. I used to treat it almost like vacations to go visit all this crazy cigar stuff. And I think it was just because I was doing it sooner than most people is why I kind of got a little bit of an advantage. I mean, I see Carlos Fuente Jr. there with his hearts. I want to point something else. I want you to know that as much as this man shows me love, he has never invited me to come visit his factory. So I just want to put him on call that, and let me say,
Carlito's gonna get it.
You can't.
It's getting shady in this motherfucker.
You can't go visit somebody else's factory unless they invite you. It's kind of like being a vampire, right? You got to be invited in. So I'm publicly asking. I'm publicly declaring, Mr. Carlito Fuente Jr. I would love to come and visit the palace in the Dominican Republic at some point.
Oh my God! Out of all the factories you went to, you have not been to the chateau.
Never been to Chateau.
Wow.
In fact,
Carlito, did you hear that?
One of the very few factories I've never actually been to.
Oh my God. Carlito's gonna get it now.
I'm just milking for a trip. You know that.
Let's take care of you, Steve.
I just want to go smoke free Opus X for a few days. Mooch a little.
Go ride on a horse or whatever, right?
I don't need a horse. I don't need to kill some poor horse. I'm not gonna put some horse through that misery.
Oh my God.
Read it, Arlene.
I see it. I see you, Carlito. I see you.
I said F you.
Little boy. Don't forget the little boy part.
F you, little boy. Now I know you never listen to me. I'm insulted. Oh Lord. We should get him on the show. Okay, Casey. What else you got?
Before we get off the Carlito Fuente.
Can you hear me finally?
They're one of the very few still family owned and operated companies in the industry. And he's taken a position of kind of leading the charge on a lot of issues that probably don't always serve his best interest. And there are things that he could avoid that he chooses not to. And I don't know that people say this to him publicly or not, but it doesn't go unnoticed. It is greatly appreciated, particularly by us smaller companies that look, we need all the help we can get. It's a tough battle.
It is.
So he's been a real champion for as an industry, we've been moving more towards consolidation and big European and Chinese conglomerates and all of that. And regretfully, great cigars are not made in that environment. great cigars are made by individuals, and it's I don't know what the future holds. I mean, maybe tomorrow the Fuentes get bought out by someone else. I don't want him to say, no, we'd never sell, because that's a bad thing to say out loud, because you never know what the future is going to be. But everything that the family has done to this date for the industry, it doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated.
That means a lot.
Thank you for that. That's very true. That means a lot. Casey?
Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me?
We're getting better, Casey.
Wow. Okay, so that's like the fourth Wi-Fi I've tried. It's been ridiculous. I don't know what I'm on my phone now. I just said F the computer.
I was gonna say, you need better neighbors.
No, so there's a couple extensions in my house, and I don't like it worked fine from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock when we started the show, and then all of a sudden it decided to go. I have no clue. Yeah, it's this, or I'm drunk for a podcast. There's always something. You were talking about the things that you've done in the beginning, kind of before everybody was doing them. Like you just said, you were old enough, you were in love with cigars enough, and you started things. What prompted the events that you did? Like, what kind of events did you do? You talked about the hearse.
Yeah, so like I'll tell you, like the very first, I started doing things locally here, where I get friends together and we do like cigar swap dinners, where the deal was we would look at that time, most boxes came in 25 count. So we would limit to 25 people, and everybody would have to bring a box of cigars. And then everybody at the dinner got one cigar out of everybody's box that they brought. So it was kind of an interesting thing. And the deal was to, bring something special, something unique, something you really loved. And look, there were always 3 or 4 dirtbag dudes that would bring some cheap ass shit that they bought out of some discount bin. But guess what? They just didn't get invited back. And it's just that simple. And that was a great format for an event, to do that. I started doing tours in Little Havana, actually like renting a trolley and going from factory to factory when there were all the little chinchillas and fabriquitas. We'd go down there for a weekend. Probably culminated with my largest events I did with John Chunko and Johnny Drew, not the John Drew of Drew Estate, but John Zunsky. We started doing things in Vegas called boondoggles. And the first one was 85 people from across the country that came to Vegas for 3 days. And the last one we did, we had nearly 400 people. In fact, Carlito will be very quick to tell you that he gave me like 400 of the first Opus X before they were ever sold to share with the people that had come to the boondoggle in Vegas. Yeah, we used it. One of the people in the group, Mig, he got married to his lovely wife. And we used that as the cigar to celebrate their marriage, because he got married there in Vegas in front of everybody. So, yeah, it got kind of crazy. And we did it all non-for-profit. And what was the impetus for doing it? I think it's like anything. You make friends online, and eventually you actually want to connect in real and actually meet them and see who they are. And it's much different than it is now, because back then we just had words, right? We didn't have pictures in Usenet. Okay, so
we didn't have video, nothing.
When you met someone, you were really truly meeting them like blind. So you had an image of your mind of who they were, what they looked like, what they sounded like, and then you'd be like confronted with reality. Damn, Saka, you're fat and ugly. I never thought you. I mean, it was really kind of cool. It was different, because now everyone posts so much pictures in social media. We know what people look like, engage in Zooms. So you've heard how people really talk and how they really interact. But back then, all we had were the words. So it was really, really something else. And if you really think about what a leap of faith that was, because you were really, truly going to meet real strangers. I mean, that is what you were doing for all practical purposes. And, but yeah, I think it was just human nature was the impetus. You want to get together. You want to share life. You want to enjoy each other's company.
I still have a couple close friends from like MySpace that are like my friends in real life. And one of them is a world-class comedian now. He's got a show in Chicago. But as you said, I mean, when we first all met online, it was strictly words. And that's just an interesting thing. So that's, I mean, you were just really a pioneer when it comes to different kinds of events.
Pioneer implies that you did something special and arduous. No, I was just sitting on my ass in front of a keyboard, So I don't think pioneer is an apt term, to be honest with you.
Well, you can say that, and that's just a little bit of humbleness about yourself, which a lot of people feel that you don't have sometimes. But you were.
Yeah.
If you were first, you were a pioneer.
I mean, look, your comments are absolutely true. I've always been very confident. I'm very secure in who I am and in what I think and why I think it. But I'm I'm super critical of pretty much everything. But I'm hypercritical of myself. You know what I mean? And I've always been that way. Yeah, I mean, and look, and I understand that I rub some people the wrong way, but it goes back to the previous conversation, doesn't it? I mean, you
make a great cigar while you do it, though.
Yeah, you cannot go through life just trying to make everybody else happy, because you just end up being sad and shallow. It just sucks way too much life out of you. You got to be who you are. And I saw that comment, Carlito, and I appreciate it that you thought I was special.
Yeah.
Well, I think you definitely hit on something.
Oh, he's special. Yeah. Well, anyways.
But I think you hit on something when you were talking about you make your cigars for yourself and you hope that other people like them, choose to buy them, etc. And I think that speaks to your character as well. Like, you are who you are. People are going to love you. They're going to hate you, but they're not going to meet another one like you. And I think that's the best thing that people
I hope they don't. I can tell you that.
The original was thrown, the original mold was thrown away when God created you. That's it. We've got one Steve Saka. But I think that's something that a lot of people need to embrace, is just being true to who they are. Whether it's the cigar world, just in anything they do, because when you put up a facade, when you're constantly changing, etc., it's really, like you said, it's very shallow.
But getting back to, I think we're migrating back to that. I think it was that way for our father's generation, but then we had all of this interconnectivity and all of this instant judgment and all these dopamine hits and the likes and the loves and all of that stuff. I think most people are now getting to the point that they're starting to realize how thin all of that really is. You know what I mean? So I think we're on the recovery. I really do. Maybe I'm being too Pollyannish about it, but I get the vibe when I talk to more and more people that people are starting to realize that, okay, enough is enough. I can't live to this ideal, this personification. I mean, I can't even imagine. Imagine what it's like to be one of those Instagram chicks, right? That has constantly got to do those photos and constantly get those comments.
I mean, it's so difficult.
Constantly fish. Yes. I mean, that's got to be just a horrible existence, right? It's got to feel good in the beginning, right? Because you're getting all that like false love, but at some point, it just got to eat at your soul. Right. And I think that's true with everything. I don't think it's just them. I think it's the bloggers. I think it's the podcasters. I think it's just operating in the social media environment. I think eventually I think people realize that they can't appease constantly.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Well, so when you started, I know when you were speaking with Arlene, you talked about the fact that you weren't born into cigars or anything like that. When you really jumped into crafting cigars, creating cigars, when you realized that was the path you wanted to go down, do you feel that the Carlitos of the world, do you feel like the family cigar makers and manufacturers welcomed you? Or did you kind of have to like fight to crawl into that world?
No, I don't want to say I had to fight. I think people were very opening and welcoming. I mean, the one thing that people do like, people that are really into something, they like to share it. And I think one of the advantages I had was I never had to pretend that I knew. So like when you get born into the family, it's almost like you almost like instantly have to be an expert, right?
Like
you
Michael
have no
Jordan's son.
choice. You're in the family, right? And it kind of puts you in a weird position where, for me, I could ask stupid question after stupid question, and it was okay because I was just some white dude that didn't know jack shit. You know what I mean? And I was just willing to ask the questions. And I mean, and I got the benefit of a lot of people that took time with me that really had no reason to take time with me because there was no financial benefit to them, but they were just genuinely, they wanted to share what they were into and what they did every day and how they did it and why they did it. And they were just happy to have someone that was actually genuinely interested, because look, you get people that are interested in cigars, but you don't get people that are interested in, the difference between anaerobic and aerobic, clone fermentation. I mean, which process is better? Why? What are the temperatures? Why is it this temperature? How do you do? I mean, I was really trying to drill down and get as much knowledge as possible. And the one thing that I can just say without any hesitation, there are many people that know a hell of a lot more than me about what their given part of their job is. The thing that I have a benefit over most is I know enough about the entire industry, all the way from the fields to the final point that gets to the retail store. And we're in a business where most people in our industry, they're into farming, they're into pre-industry, they're into marketing, they're into sales, they're into brand development, they're into strategy, they're into operations, they're into there's very few people that have had the benefit of actually being intimately involved in all the stages, and that provides a tremendous benefit. I don't know that there's maybe more than 10 people in our business that really have been into everything. And I got to tell you, and a lot of those 10 people, they never had the benefit of working directly side by side with a Lou Rothman for 4 years and drafting off his wisdom. They never had the experience of, growing a company, that was on the verge of bankruptcy into the largest manufacturer in Nicaragua. Now, look, I didn't do that on my own. Okay, that's physically impossible. But I was there at ground zero as we were doing it, party to every part of it. And those are life experiences that, a lot of people never have the chance to even be involved with. And every time you have one of those experiences, you glean some knowledge out of it. Look, I still learn stuff all the time now, and it's looking, and I'm still, even to this day, I'm not afraid to ask questions. It was one of the things that always, so like when I was at Drew Estate and we would do the cigar safaris, every year we would do a safari for the bloggers, right? It was a dedicated tour that the bloggers, all the media people would come down. Honestly, they were the worst tour. They asked very few questions. Okay. And I think the reason they don't ask the questions is because they don't want to look like they don't know as much as the other media guy next to them. Right. Because it was actually the regular consumer groups. They asked much more engaging, interesting questions. And they actually got way better conversations than the media groups typically did, because nobody in the media group was willing to kind of like say, hey, I don't understand this. Why do you do this? What's the purpose of this? How does this work? Because it's just human nature that you don't want to feel as though you look like you don't know, because everyone assumes that you know.
Right.
And once you just put that aside, you just realize, look, I am probably one of the best. I'm probably one of the most knowledgeable people in our industry, and I'm still clueless about a lot of things. And I don't, and it doesn't bother me to ask the questions. You learn a lot.
Right. So, Steve, let's, we went a little bit, we talked about your background and all of that. Let's fast forward now to 1999.
Okay.
Let's talk about, because I'm especially interested in this. Let's talk about your.
Hold on a second. Oh, Casey.
A lot of feedback. So let's talk about your first paying job that you landed with Lou Rothman.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a weird situation. I went to him to talk about writing a book, and at the end of that conversation, we We talked about hot dogs. We talked about muscle cars. We talked about baseball. And a couple hours into it, he's like, hey, yeah, I'd like you to come work for me. And it was kind of like, doing what? And it's kind of like, well, we'll figure that out.
Wow.
You know, you're really into cigars. You're really into tobacco. You like going to these shitty third world countries. At that time, it was the largest cigar retailer in the world. And he's like, yeah, you're really into cigars. We'll figure out what to do with a cigar guy. And it was a tremendous opportunity. And let me say this about Lou. Lou is not someone that taught you. Lou is somebody that you learn through osmosis. You know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, every once in a while Lou would sit you down and say, let me explain this to you. But that was typically not the way it worked with him. You would just see the way he would think and the things that he would say and the actions he would take, and you would learn from that. And also, when he would do those things, you would then say, Lou, I don't understand why we're doing this. What's the reason why? And then he would explain it to you as to what he was doing. And you learn a lot because you're in a business that's directly selling to consumers, and you really learn a lot about the commercial aspect of the cigar business. And I know the commercial aspect is not something you as consumers care about, but the reality is the commercial portion of the business is the reason the business exists. There wouldn't be fine handmade cigars for you guys to smoke if we didn't have an effective way to run it as a profitable business. It has to be that in order for the products to be there and for them to be good. They can't be made in a vacuum. And unlike an artist who can just have paint and a brush and a canvas that doesn't need anybody else's help, you're talking about something where literally, even in the smallest of operations, there are dozens of people that are involved in order to get you from point A to point B. And making the cigar alone is not good enough. You can make the world's greatest cigars at the greatest price, but if you don't know how to get them into the marketplace, and you don't know how to properly brand them, and you don't know how the distribution channels work, and you don't know all the pitfalls and all of the different aspects that are involved in actually getting cigars from the point of the factory to the consumer, then it doesn't matter that you've made the greatest cigar in the world. Many of the most talented cigar makers, you guys will never know their names. You will never hear their story, okay? Because they are in their bubble doing what their job is. And guess what? Even if those people were given the opportunity, they would fail, because just knowing how to make a good cigar is not enough.
Wow.
It just simply isn't.
Yeah. So is it safe to say, like, all of your travels and experiences, I mean, that really was beneficial for you with Lou?
Oh, absolutely. But I think you could say that about anybody, right? You learn something every time you go through an airport, right? You learn every time when you go visit a new country. You pick up stuff. And the other thing too is, you know, keeping your eyes open, keeping your ears open. You know, look, when I'm doing these podcasts, I dominate them, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same when I'm in the factory and I'm talking to the workers. I'm spending way more time listening than I'm spending talking.
Wow. So you really are a cigar geek.
Regretfully so.
So Steve, what is with all of the different, you know, cigar brands that are coming out, all the cigar makers? Thank you, Casey. With all the different cigar brands that are coming out, what is your advice to all these guys who are coming in, you know, and then to really, you know, from scratch?
This is a really difficult conversation, because the last thing you want to do is squash anyone's dreams, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, look, we're not really what I would consider super successful yet. We have a long way to go. But we're definitely in the up and coming right now. We're doing well. So you also don't want to be critical in a way that makes it seem as though you're discouraging them to become your competitor, because that just seems like you're just being a jerk off, right? So I think the best advice that I could give to somebody new is, it requires a lot more capital than you think it does. You need to understand that you probably are not going to make any living wage for a minimum of 3 to 5 years. Okay. You have to also understand that you are going to have to grind and hustle at a level that is really almost unsustainable. It's something that, and it's going to be just sheer misery, and you have to accept that. I mean, look at this month. Nicaragua. I'm back home for 2 days. I fly to Florida for the Great Smoke, great event, but exhausting. I'm back for 3 days. Yesterday, I'm out there, on the ice fishing. I was there at that event last night till 2 in the morning. I got home last night at 4:30 in the morning. I got up this morning, or like 4 hours later. I worked for 4 hours because I got stuff that I got to get ready for the factories to proceed on Monday. I'm now going to do this podcast. When I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go grab something to eat, and I'm going to come right back up to my desk and keep working. And what they have to understand is that that's what I'm doing. So in order to have a chance, they're going to have to do the same thing. And if they're not willing to do the same thing, good luck to them, because there are people that are. Okay. And I've often, you see this all the time. I mean, being talented is great, but hustle and execution always trumps it.
Yes.
Always does. Right?
Totally agree.
Look at Derek Jeter.
Yes.
Derek Jeter, that man won because of just work ethic, right? Tom Brady, and I'm not comparing myself to either of these gentlemen. I'm using them as examples of, you got a guy, yeah, he's a fine quarterback. He's got the basic skills. But nobody would ever argue that Tom Brady was the most gifted, talented quarterback that ever hit football. But what did he do? He ground. He ate his stupid avocado fries and whatever the hell else he ate, for 20 straight years. I mean, the guy just lived and breathed it and just never, ever stopped. And that's what it's going to take, because you have very well-established companies that have a huge dominant position in the market, okay, that have all of the advantages. You've got really great legacy family companies that have been doing it for decades, that have earned their right to be where they are, okay? And you're trying to chip your way amongst your field of compatriots that are in your same weight class, and you're trying to claw your way above them. I always tell consumers, since the 1890s, there have been over 350,000 brand introductions to the United States market alone. 350,000. I mean, I think even Half Wheel said last year they had like 900 new introductions. 900 just last year.
Yeah.
That's not my number. That's the number they came up with. Of those 900, how many of them do we remember? How many of them can we name? How many of them as consumers we even smoked to decide we didn't like them? Right.
Right.
Did you even get to smoke 20 or 25 of those new things of the 900?
No.
And that's just how uber competitive it is. So you have to go into it with your eyes open and understand that you're going to be in for a slog. The lifestyle part of the projection, that's just a very thin veneer that's on the top. The reality is, it's a business of really hardworking people. You have to be willing to do that.
Absolutely. Well, do you feel that with your prior history in the industry, working as the CEO for Drew Estate and having worked on the retail side as well, do you feel that you already built a fan base that helped you catapult your brand a little bit easier?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that pedigree and history has worked to my advantage, right? It gives you a leg up. But it's not like it was an unfair leg. It was one that I grinded for 20 years to earn.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like it was not like I was Johnny come lately. So I mean, and so I think that there's no denying that I have an advantage. Okay, but it wasn't an advantage that I bought or was gifted. It was an advantage that started. It was an advantage that started back when I started traveling to tobacco countries and visiting factories in the very early 90s. And it's one that I've pretty much lived, breathed, and died ever since that point in time. I mean, it is legitimately my entire life. And that's why I found kind of the topic that we were going to discuss, my life. It's really a rather boring life when you really think about it.
I don't think so.
It's pretty much it's for the last almost 4 decades, it's been pretty much this.
It's not boring.
That has been my life.
It's not boring to us who are like so interested in this kind of life. So, but Steve, let me push that fast forward button one more time. Let's move on to 2005. Tell us how you landed your job with Drew Estate and the state of the company.
So when I was so JR Cigar got bought out by Altadis.
Mhm.
Okay, and when they got bought out by Altadis, there really wasn't a long-term future for me to be there, and I didn't really have an interest in staying. I really loved working with Lou. I didn't really love the fact that I was now going to be an employee of a company that, you know what, I didn't want to work for Altadis at the time. It's just simply that was the fact.
Right.
Right.
So I ended up in a non-compete scenario. I got a buyout from JR that locked me into a restricted covenant, and I was going to have to sit out 2 years. About a year into it, Jonathan Drew from Drew Estate approached me and asked if I'd be interested in going to Drew Estate, and that was based on a relationship that him and I had formed while I was at JR, because we had done a few projects with Drew Estate when I was at JR, and let me tell you, they were terrible. They delivered some of the worst cigars we ever bought. They were really, they did a coffee infused one for us that literally you couldn't draw a peep of air out of them. You know what I mean? You couldn't light them. They were a total disaster. But
You're just being real.
John knows it. Look, we're talking.
He knows.
Yeah. We're talking the beginning. Okay.
Yes.
He remembers those days. But I'll tell you what. I give him credit for. He went to Nicaragua. He actually started a factory.
He didn't give up.
He wasn't just fronting. You know what I mean? He wasn't just telling a dog and pony story. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that made him rather unique.
Yes.
You know, because here he is, he's gringo, crazy gringo, speaks no Spanish, and just decides to go to Nicaragua and figure it out. Right? And that's a lot different situation than you saying, hey, I'm going to go visit Esteli and I'm going to get XYZ to make me some cigars and I'm going to create some bands and a brand and I'm going to launch it. I mean, that's a much different exercise to say, hey, I'm actually going to make these cigars. Even if they're shitty cigars, I'm going to make them. And that was something that really impressed me. And but I wasn't interested in Drew. And then he was kind of like, well, what if I make you president? And I was kind of like, you know, it was still kind of a step down from what my past gig was. You remember, this is Drew Estate then, not Drew Estate now.
Right.
And then it was, well, what if we give you shares in the company vested with no money in? And that kind of made me go, hey, I kind of like that deal. So I don't have to actually put any cash in this. I have to put no money at risk. I just have to sweat equity to earn a percentage of whatever we can potentially make this into. And that was the motivating factor. But it only happened because they were actually making cigars. Had they been another company that was just a branding company, I wouldn't have done it. And that's kind of the way it started. And honestly, really lucky that I sold my house in New Hampshire when I moved to Miami, because after the first month, had I not sold my house, I would have left there. I would have come right back home. That would have been the smart play. I had no idea what a shit show I was putting myself into, but we worked it out.
You
know what? We took what they had, and we as a team, we made it into something really great.
Amazing.
It was a very difficult time for everybody, but I think the experience of it is it's irreplaceable.
Wow. I mean, that was, you can't even fathom what you would get into starting from the very bottom.
Gilly, until you know John well enough, you really have no idea how actual crazy he is.
Oh, we know.
No, you have a surface idea how crazy John is, man.
Special.
The real John, I love you, brother, but you're fucking insane. Okay?
He is. He is. So Casey, is it on you?
That's what makes him unique, right? That's what makes him different. That's what makes him not like everybody else.
Absolutely.
Hey, Steve, real quick, man. So you brought up DE. Jonathan's been grooming Louie and I since about 2012, 2013. So, and we've been in some conferences with him in the there's corporate in the conference
I'm
room.
out. Choose your words carefully here, Mike.
Yeah, I am.
I don't need anything from my friends at Drew. All I got to do is share love with them.
Hey, no.
If they're a sponsor or something, don't make things messy here.
We've been in the conference room, man, and he is a different dude. And we're like, wow, on a business perspective. So, what does that look like? What did it look like for you when you went on there and you're sitting there with him?
Let me say this. I don't know what John's like today, honestly, right? and John, look, John and I aren't close anymore. And John and I are separated from a business perspective since 2013. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So now it's more of a mutual admiration, sometimes a what the fuck is he thinking kind of conversation. And it goes both ways, right? It's not just me thinking that. That's him thinking it too.
Yeah.
So I don't know where John is, but I can tell you in the early days, the best way I compare the way we operated as an executive team at Drew Estate. Do you remember the MTV show Celebrity Deathmatch, where they make the clay figures, and the clay figures would like chainsaw each other apart and rip their heads off? That was a typical day at Drew Estate. It was Celebrity Deathmatch.
Oh my God, because you had Salucci then too, right?
You had Salucci, you had Marvin Camel. It was like literally a cast of characters. It was like the Inglorious Bastards in real time. It was messy.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
That's what I was alluding to, man. I'm sure it had to have been a little special with having you, Salucci, John, Marvin, and here you are, the president.
Yeah,
that's a cast of characters.
That is a cast. Casey, what you got?
So, Steve, you were talking about this wide angle view of the cigar industry, like all these different facets that you learned that kind of gives you a different perspective than a lot of people. What out of all of that, what is your favorite part of the industry?
Great question.
I'll tell you the thing that I get the biggest chubby out of, even to this date, is I really love it when somebody chooses one of your cigars to mark a birthday or an anniversary or the birth of a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a really extra special compliment, And the other thing that I really love about the cigar business is that we're in one of the few industries where people actually want to give us their money. They're actually happy. They want the product to be really good, right? They want to be good. And when it's good, they're happy to give you their hard-earned cash. And there aren't a lot of things that we as consumers buy that we feel that way about, right? There's a lot of stuff that we have to buy. We need to buy. Okay, look, and it varies for everyone. Like, okay, maybe you guys love to buy shoes. Me, I hate the experience. I see a pair on Zappos. I order the size I normally wear. So I order a 13, and then I order a 12 and a half, and I order one size bigger. I get all three. I try them on. Whichever the three fit, I keep. The other two instantly go back. That's my whole. I wish my shoes never wore out, right? I just wish they did. But for some people though, shoes are like something they take joy out of. They take love out of. They really get into it. I think it depends. And in cigars, we're in that kind of business.
Yeah.
Where people really, really are happy to give you their money if you give them satisfaction, relaxation, a mechanism to celebrate with their family and their friends, to spend time. I mean, I know there's a lot of wives that, kind of give their husbands hard times about cigars, but I know a lot more wives that love the fact their husband will smoke a cigar on the back patio. And even if they're not smoking a cigar with them, they like to sit out there with a glass of wine, and they actually get to spend an hour talking.
Right.
And look, and in this world today, the ability to actually take an hour and a half and just chill and have a moment to spend with people you love and talk, that's really special. And that's something that the cigar serves as the crutch, the mechanism to allow that to happen, because it forces you to stop. It forces you to slow down.
That's what I love about it. And it's funny you say that, because when I'm at a store, I go to a cigar store, and I don't have a problem spending $12 on a cigar, $15, whatever. In California, $20 to $30 in California. But if I were to go someplace else and buy whatever product, I'd actually be like, I don't know if I want to buy it. It's $12. You
Right.
know, I'd actually question it. But with a cigar, it's a no-brainer for me.
My light fell. All right, so I'm gonna blank my screen for a moment so I can reattach it, but I'm still here. Keep talking. I am still here.
That was the glow.
Now, when
he was glowing.
The glow.
Oh my God.
It's like that TikTok where they have the light and they turn into like hot, sexy man.
That ain't happening.
But Steve, I've got another DE question though. So when you were with DE and you were working with Nick and the Liga Privada was created, what was the inspiration behind that? Was that like was there, did you have a certain inspiration for this cigar? How did that cigar get created?
Well, first off, this light thing ain't gonna stick. So let me run some other lights really quick here.
Wait, what did he just say?
Technical problems.
Okay. Bump, 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 bump. People are wondering, what sort of outfit is this? All right.
See that glow.
All right.
This is
give it
a
up
hot
on this
mess
light.
today.
There you go.
This light, it's got this suction cuppy thing. It ain't for shit. Turn the damn thing off. All right, there we go.
There you
At least I'm not in
go.
the dark anymore. So honestly, Liga Privada really did start off as my personal cigar because here I was president of the Wacky Tobacco Cigar Company, and they didn't make any cigars that I wanted to smoke. It's pretty embarrassing to be a president of a cigar company. And look, I'm not denigrating the people that love acid or the people that love what I guess Laroton, which I guess doesn't exist anymore, but you know, a Deadwood, Sweet Jane, that style of cigar, it just isn't my cup of tea, right? So Liga Privada was really made originally just for me to smoke. So I had something that I could pull out of my pocket and say, yeah, we'll make this in the factory. Plus, one of the original reasons I was brought to the company, other than to be the adult in the room, was to also provide some gravitas to get them on track to make traditional cigars, because they had tried in the past to make a variety of traditional cigars. Some of them not so good. Some of them were actually good, but they couldn't get them into the marketplace and be successful. So part of my joining the company, part of my task was to make Drew Estate legitimate in the eyes of a traditional cigar smoker, right? And so that starts with us making really good traditional cigars. And we made a cigar first. We had a cigar released before Liga Privada. It was a thing called Chateau Real. I wasn't as involved in the blending process of that cigar. It was good. It was okay. It was decent, but it wasn't like earth-shattering. You know what I mean? It was just a good, solid cigar. But Liga Privada was a much different animal. It was really one of those unique blends that kind of stood out amongst a lot of its peers at the time. But it did genuinely begin as just my private cigar. And after about a year, we started selling it, but we only sold it in one size and one blend. We originally started the first year just the Toro in these big 48 count cabinets, right? It was one cigar, one blend, and then it all just kind of grew from there.
Wow.
Well, you have a palate that apparently is the god of palates for many a person, because Liga Privada blew the fuck up. Did you expect that? You knew you made a great cigar. You knew that you guys had worked and, made a great blend. But did you expect Liga to turn into what it turned into?
Yes and no. I mean, I knew that it was going to do well. I knew it was going to do well. But what I didn't know was that we were going to hit the 3-year mark on it. Because when we first started Liga Privada, we had some of our best accounts not want it. We had some of our best accounts try to sell it, and they actually returned it to us because they couldn't sell it.
That's interesting.
Well, again, you have to.
People didn't take it seriously.
Right, they didn't take it serious because it was from Drew Estate,
Mhm.
and you had to overcome that. And look, that was an internal discussion that we had before we released the brand. There was an internal conversation where, I don't want to speak for the other three people in the room, and they're really four because there was also our CFO. But there was a very large, vociferous argument that we shouldn't launch Liga Privada or even Chateau Real as Drew Estate. We should set up a separate company and do it under that name. Okay.
I didn't know that.
The company would have been completely different as we know it if that had happened.
It would have been another cigar company, right? And it would have been the moniker that we did it under. And I took the position of, look, we're in the age of information. You can't keep it a secret. It's not like before where consumers don't know that this beer is made by this company and that beer is made from this company. There's just too much in the cigar industry. It's just too small an industry. And the consumers that are really into it are really too connected. So it really feels like you're just lying if you try to hide it that you're doing it under another company. And it's going to look that way once they figure it out. And my thing is, look, this is a hill that we have to climb. Yes, it's going to be hard to get consumers to take the Drew Estate of 2005 seriously as traditional cigar smokers. But the way you do that is by just genuinely making a really exceptional cigar and holding it up as that and treating it as that and fighting the fight. And that's what we decided ultimately to do, is to fight the fight. And the brand was doing well. It doubled in sales each of the first 3 years. But what I didn't anticipate was that we'd get to the end of the third year, and for whatever reason, the cigar just got uber hot, like crazy hot. Like it didn't matter how many we made, we just couldn't make enough. And because of the long lead times, particularly on the wrapper varieties that we were using the Connecticut broadleaf, and we were going into the stock cut Habano. Those are both very miserable wrapper tobacco crops to work with that require a lot of time. We just simply didn't have enough tobacco ready was the problem. So sales just instantly so outpaced our capacity to make the cigar due to material limitations. Then that elusiveness made it even sexier to a lot of consumers, right? But it certainly wasn't intentional.
The demand.
It was just the reality of, hey, we only have so much of this to make so much of that. And that was the way it was. Now, we could have kind of, started cutting some corners here and there, but it wouldn't have helped us as a company because the idea wasn't that Liga Privada was the engine driving the company financially. That was acid. That's where we were earning our paychecks, right? We're on those cigars. Liga was a relatively small part of the portfolio, and it had greater value to protect the integrity of the brand, and just do it right than it did, let's make 3 times as much because the market is willing to pay for it.
Right.
And then even at the point that I left the company, and that was 2012-ish, they had still not caught up with Liga Privada. Now, I know since that time they've gone through swings where they have and they haven't and they have and they haven't. But look, Liga now is a real brand. I mean, I don't know what the internal numbers are, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's probably their number 2 selling product in their company portfolio. But that's just total speculation on my part. I'm probably wrong the more I think about that. Yeah, but I think
it's interesting.
Liga is a much bigger brand today than it ever was when I was with the company. Much bigger.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because being, I think, the young one in this group, when I started smoking cigars on a regular basis was probably about the 2005 mark. And even though it was not frequently, I started smoking, I guess, real cigars, because in my younger years, while I was bartending at clubs and whatnot, everyone's lighting up cigars. I thought I was fancy with the Swisher Sweet wood tips. But Drew Estate was an interesting brand because I feel like I was able to grow up with the line. When I first started smoking, I was all about like the Javas, the Isla del Sol. Then I started smoking a couple of the different acids that I still will smoke periodically in a year, but not on a regular basis. So once I started smoking like Cuba Maduros, it was like, well, now it's time to go into regular cigars because you can't get much more.
Some
And so
people,
that kind of helped me transition into these great brands.
look, some people make that transition. Other people never leave it. They're just very satisfied with the experience that they're getting from the infused variety of cigars. And that was something that Drew Estate was really
Right.
different. We really weren't at that point. We were adding value to the industry, not taking away from it, because there's a lot of people
Right.
that over the last 20 years, their introduction to handmade premium cigars were acids. They were Javas. They were tobacco specials. They were Kahluas that we used to make for General Cigar
That was my
Company,
first.
and that was their foray.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, and that's
People
what,
thought those Kahluas were phenomenal.
and that's what got people into cigar smoking. And that was the thing that was really interesting about Drew Estate. And the other thing too that I think allowed Drew Estate to separate itself from the other companies is we never treated the consumer. So even though I publicly have always said that, you know, those cigars aren't my cup of tea, we never ever treated those consumers like they were redheaded stepchildren.
Right.
We always treated them with respect. We were charging them $8 for a cigar, and we gave them a cigar that was genuinely worth $8. Where most of the people in the past that had made some sort of flavored style product, they would do it with lesser grade materials, lesser attention to detail, not as good construction, because they just figured, well, the customers that smoke whatever this is, they're not real cigar smokers. They don't know any different, you know, and they would treat them that way. And we never did. We assumed basically if a customer is willing to spend $10 for a Cuba Maduro, they deserve a cigar that's worthy of $10. It just simply has a different taste than any other cigar, right? But the cigar itself, separate of the infusion process, that would have been a perfectly fine, mild cigar on the marketplace with nice, clean materials that were well made. Attention was paid, and I think that's really what helped separate Drew Estate, because we had a lot of competitors that tried to break in when they saw how much we were selling, and not little people. I mean, General themselves, you know, we used to do Kahlua for them, and when they decided when we couldn't do Kahlua anymore because Allied Domecq pulled back the licensing agreement, they just didn't want Kahlua and tobacco anymore. Which is bad on you, Kahlua. You sell a liquor that goes to 18 to 19-year-old girls, but we won't get into that. they
or coffee.
Yeah, but we General's like, well, we don't need you because your value was Kahlua, and if you don't have the Kahlua trademark for us to use anymore, we'll just make it ourselves. And they took Helix and they made Helix into Helix Remix. And with all the marketing dollars and all of their effort and all their distribution and all of their experience, it was just a complete, utter failure. And it was because they didn't understand that you can't just take any tobacco and slap some flavoring on it and say, oh, here you go, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. You know, you're going to love this, because that ain't how it works.
Right.
Not at all. So that leads me to another question.
Oh, go ahead.
You are on this uphill with Drew Estate, and, you know, the cigars are, you know, top of the line. You know, they've got the infused industry locked down. The Liga comes along and starts, you know, blowing things out of the water. And then you leave Drew Estate. Why?
A variety of reasons. I can laundry list them. I mean, look, first off, I got tired of the battle royales. Okay, it was a difficult environment. You know, we were all working 100+ hours a week. I was worn out. They wanted to take the company into mass market and hookah and pipe tobacco and little snooze packets. I mean, they had a million ideas of things that they wanted to do. And they were all things that I honestly only had a cursory knowledge of. So it really wasn't something that I would be the right person as the president of the company to help them take them to the next level, because it was something that was not only did it not have appeal to me personally, but it was also out of my scope of expertise, you know. And it, you know, I can't. How do you run a company that you don't even understand what you're running? So I didn't feel as though I was really the right person to be in that job any longer, if that was the direction they wanted to go.
Okay.
And then the biggest thing, though, more than anything else, was my wife, Cindy. You know, we lived a rather is bucolic a word? What's that? Bucolic. You know, a very serene New Hampshire, kind of a Martha Stewart kind of existence up here in rural New England. And, you know, I had uprooted her and dropped her into Miami.
Yeah.
Look, I know there's a lot of folks out there that love Miami. We aren't one of them. I think it's a great place to go on vacation, spend a couple weeks, enjoy yourself, but then just get the hell out, right?
I agree.
We're just not Miami people.
Right.
So we relocated 6 times in 6 years trying to find some place that kind of worked, and nothing did. And after the 6th move, Cindy was like, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to go back to New Hampshire and buy a house. Whenever you're done, you know, doing whatever the hell it is we're doing here, I'll be there. And look, and I tried.
Wow.
Look, in the beginning, I'd fly up to New Hampshire once a month. She'd fly to Miami once a month. We see each other twice a month. 3-4 months into it, it was then once a month. We got a year into it, like, babe, I can't come this month. Well, I can't come this month either. And I just realized that I was just, you know, I was becoming distant with my wife over a job, you know, and over my love for cigars, and that can't happen, right?
Yeah.
And that was probably more than anything else the biggest impetus for me deciding ultimately to leave. And it came as a shock to them, because at that point we were actually making money. Things were going really well. Things were easier than they had ever been before. And I mean, even given the philosophical decisions about which direction to take the business being a discussion, that wasn't really the primary thing. It was more the fact that my wife had just had enough of Miami, and that's really what prompted me to leave the company.
Wow. And
it's kind of dumb, because normally you don't leave a company that's doing well and you have a job like that. This is a situation where I genuinely actually left of my own accord instead of being pushed out with a bullshit story.
Yeah.
Look, they tried to talk me out of it, because look.
And you left in 2012?
I left in February of 2012 is when I actually really left. But for contractual reasons, it didn't end up being until like June, right around the trade show of 2012 is when the official announcement was. But effectively, I really wasn't running the company or doing anything with factory operations from March 2012 on.
Wow.
So 3 years later, it's 2015, whatnot. How old were you when you left the company?
Good God, you're gonna make me do math? I don't know. Well, let's think about this.
How old are you now? How old are you now?
He was 50
now. So I was 46 years old when I left her estate. 46. 47,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
So I'm that age now. I'm about to be 48. And all I can think about is retirement. And I tell my parents all the time, they lied. Right. It's hilarious, but I tell my parents they lied. Like, they did not tell me what working in your 40s was like, that you have these 20 years of work behind you and you still got like 20 years ahead of you. It's ridiculous.
And they're your best working years too. They're the ones where you this company.
Right.
Right. Supposedly, depending on what you're doing. And so then you decide, like, you know, retirement is I can kind of see the light of retirement. And you decide to start Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. What in the entire hell were you thinking?
So I've actually, look, I'm not rich, but I've actually been retirement.
Tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
But I've actually been retirement okay since 92. So
okay.
And so everything I've done since 92 work-wise, all the cigar stuff, the working for Lou, the working with Drew, even this, they've all been a conscious decision that I want the misery. And so that really changes the way you look at things, you know, because then you're making the decision. And I'll tell you what I kind of learned. So having been bought out 3 times, I used to just think it was the workaholic part of me that made me want to always come back and do something new. What I realized after the 3rd buyout, and probably what I'm been more keenly attuned to this time around, is it's not just the work part. It's the fact that I like the stress. I like the misery. I like to be in a bad mood. I like to be overwhelmed. I like the chaos, and I like to perpetually bitch about it. I actually enjoy the continual bitching and being curmudgeon-y, and it's actually part of when I feel the smartest, the brightest, the more alive. It's a very weird mental flaw that I have, but the whole concept of being in balance and serenity, that just sounds like hell to me. I just can't even imagine it. I can't even I can't even wrap my brain around it. And look, but I am getting to the point now. What I have noticed, particularly over the last 5 years, I'm not physically capable of doing today what I was physically capable of doing 20 years ago. I've allowed myself to get too out of shape. I've allowed myself to get too drawn, too worn down. I'm somewhere in the relatively near future. I'm never going to find balance, but I have to find a way to kind of go back a little the other way. The dilemma that I have is we're doing really, really well right now. I mean, things are just simply on fire for us. And I mean, if the world froze right now, like if all of you guys just froze, everybody that's watching us, the entire planet, I could use at least 180 days to catch up.
Yeah.
I need 180 days of nothing, of nobody, no wife, no kids, no business, no deals, no trips, no anything, just to catch up, to get to just kind of like, okay, here we are. I have a normal workload moving ahead, and that's
what would you do?
I would work my ass off.
What would you do in those 180 days?
I have a lot of stuff to do. I'm way behind. I mean, look, last year, I was probably 1 million cigars short last year. I'm probably going to be 1.5 million cigars short this year. I don't even know how many accounts we got on the waiting list to open. Wow. It's crazy. You know what I mean? And and I'm having my own little weird Liga Privada moment with Sober Mesa Brulee. Sober Mesa Brulee, we've never, from jump when we launched the brand, we've never ever made enough Sober Mesa Brulee. We just, and we're making a ton of it. We're making more all the time, but we have never, ever, ever satisfied the demand for Sober Mesa Brulee ever. And that's true of other cigars that we have, Sin Compromiso and a variety of thises and that's. But Brulee, it's like crazy, like really like, oh my God.
Wow.
We're so far behind on Brulee. It's absurd. I mean, I don't even know what the ceiling is on the cigar. I think even if I could produce 3 times more, I don't think it's enough.
Wow.
So we know, I mean, we see the success of DT&T. And what are your thoughts on, because we look at these other manufacturers, and like you said, it's an industry expectancy, I guess, and folks know it. Like, you guys work insane hours, you know, it's a constant. But the fact that you've been able to accomplish in less than a decade what a lot of manufacturers still out here are trying to do, like, give us your thoughts and feelings on that, because you've accomplished in 7 years.
This is where
what companies haven't been able to do in 20 and 30.
This is where I get the arrogance tag. I'm just fucking better at it than they. I just work harder than they do. I mean,
that's what it takes.
I mean, it's just.
I love that.
Look, I mean, when you actually, if you step back, I don't think about it because I'm in the weeds, right? But if you actually just step back and you look at the portfolio and you look at the brands and you look at the blends, it really is a tremendous accomplishment for even a mega company to do. Right. A company that has nothing but endless resources and manpower. And the fact that we've managed to do it by bootstrapping and shoestringing and grinding. And look, and again, it's not just me. It's my team too. It isn't possible without Amber and Yvonne and Dave and now Derek and Allie, and of course my wife Cindy. I mean, they're all key components to the business. And Anna also, she recently joined us. I mean, it's and Casey, don't want to forget Casey. She's really important. She actually handles the money at this point. So I mean, it's really it really is mind-blowing what we've managed to accomplish. But for me, I don't really get to think about that because all I'm dealing with is the day-to-day problems and the fires to constantly keep the beast being fed. And that's the challenge that I have to deal with. You hope that at some point it'll get a little bit more even-keeled, right? But then, do you really want that? I mean, do you want sales to slow down? Do you want things to slow up? I mean, it's like you're kind of foolish to want that.
For you, even killed sounds like boredom.
Yeah, I think it is boring.
So there was a question that came across the screen earlier. I can't remember who asked it, but one of the viewers asked where, and I can't remember the exact number of years, but where do you see Dunbarton?
The question,
where do you see the company in five years or so?
Where do you see the company 10 years from now? The honest answer is I don't know. Because look, we're in a really difficult environment. Competition is incredibly stiff. This FDA situation has not gone away. It's been on pause courtesy of the court decision about a year and a half ago. The study that the court mandated, or that the FDA said they do in response to the court mandate, is about to be published. In fact, it's supposed to drop this week. We don't know what the study says in it, but if it's like any government funding study, I can already tell you tobacco is evil, and that's what it's going to say. And then we are going to begin the battle royale once again to fight that. It's one of the things about our business that I find the most disappointing is I don't know that there's a long-term future for combustible tobacco. You have two generations of children that have been basically indoctrinated of all the bad without being told all the good that also comes from it. And you see the way the governments locally and federally are marching. You see what's happening in Canada and New Zealand. I mean, like New Zealand's passing a law, I think it goes into effect 3 years from now, where they're going to raise the smoking age 1 year every year, which effectively means that if you aren't 18 on the date that the law goes into place, you will never, ever be able to buy a tobacco product because guess what? Next year, the age is going to be 20, and the year after that's going to be 21, and the year after that's going to be 22. So, I mean, this is something that's very concerning. And it makes it where the only players that can survive are the big mega corporations, Chinese buying Altadis and Habanos, the Europeans owning Davidoff and STG through Swedish Match. And look, I have no ill will towards them. They're doing what's in their best interest of their business, but what's in the best interest of their business does not always align with what's in the best interest of a business like mine, that small independent cigar manufacturer, brand owner, that's just trying to do something, unique and different. And that's the part that I find very disconcerting because I don't know. And it's also one of the reasons why I've also been very reluctant to pour fuel on this fire because look, it's not that I don't know how to grow. This company right now could be a $20, $25 million a year company if I was willing to pour that gas on it. But to pour that gas on it also means I'd have to take debt. Okay, and take that long-term risk. And the way we operate the company is as a debt-free company. It was entirely self-funded. There's no partners. There's no anything. And I'm not really ready to go out on a limb because I don't know what our government's going to do. And I can see a future where the government's going to make what I do for a living. They're not going to necessarily make it illegal, but they're going to make it to where somebody like myself can't even participate and play in the game. And if that's the case, it makes it hard to be bright about the future of where we're going. The only thing that I look at is maybe a small seed of hope is the booming cannabis industry. The thing that propels it is the same kind of libertarian viewpoint, okay, that should also allow handmade cigars to exist, to allow adults to make adult choices. You know what I mean? And look, and we're in an industry that's probably one of the best regulated when it comes to youth. We don't target youth. We don't market to youth. We don't sell in environments that youth have access to typically. But we see those lines being blurred when you see the big mega companies now putting their cigar products in gas stations, right? And look, it's so I kind of feel that I'm not really in control of my own destiny anymore.
Right.
I feel as though I'm at the whims of the wind, and all I can try to do is sail the prevailing winds the best and navigate the best that I can. But in the end, if there's a hurricane, I'm going to get swallowed alive, and there isn't much that I can really do about it. And it's one of the things that kind of holds me back from being uber aggressive.
I understand that.
Now you talk about you talk about the FDA and things like that. And here's a question to kind of lead into our open session with the ask all tell all from the viewers and whatnot. Arlene posted something in her 50 Shades of Smoke group earlier this week, well, last week, I guess now, regarding some of these manufacturers that appear, we'll use these words, to be marketing to younger people. We've got cigars with certain flavor combos. We've got cigars packaged in what looks like a chocolate bar. What are your takes on that? And then the other question that I know that was posed is,
I mean, I know it's going to bother the people that are fans of these companies and the manufacturers of those products, but I think it's irresponsible given the current federal regulatory environment that we're regretfully going to operate in. Do I agree philosophically that yes, they're selling them to adults? They're not trying to market whatever to children. Children don't have access to the products. But the problem is that's not the way politics works.
Right.
Politicians pull out anything they can pull out.
Right.
And slam it down the desk and they say, what about this? Yeah. And that's where it becomes a problem. But I have to tell you, that whole conversation, even though I wasn't called out in that conversation, it also made me think. I mean, look, I have sobremesa brulee. Now, is brulee a food term? Not a food term. I mean, many people associate with food, but it really
most kids don't know what brulee is. It's not cookies and cream.
But I mean, there's different levels of shades and gray. Look, it isn't my job to criticize what other people do. Okay, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. But I think that it does cause a problem, whether it's right, whether it's justified, whether there is a logical argument as to why it shouldn't. These things are all true, but it just simply doesn't matter, because what you're asking for reasonable cognizant thought by these idiot politicians. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I think we can all universally agree that there's idiots on both sides. And anytime you give them something simple to use against you, they just use it against you. And that's what they do. And so I think as an industry, I think we all need to be a little bit more self-reflective about what we do, and that'll be in the best interest of everybody, including those companies too, because as that drumbeat gets louder, those companies will lose some consumers because of it. And that's not what they want either. They want to grow their companies. They want to grow their base. But I just, the problem is if you get into calling this person out and that person out, that just never, ever ends. And all you end up doing is alienating their group of people. So like the people that some of these companies bring in as new consumers, well, guess what? I want those guys to someday become Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust smokers. I don't want to pee in their Cheerios, right? I'm hoping someday they'll give a brand like mine a shot, and maybe they'll add that to their rotation on top of the products they already smoke. I mean, and the other thing too is I think, and you also understand
with the way.
Go ahead.
Oh, with the way the FDA is going, and the kind of backflash that we're seeing from it, as cigar stores are selling these items, are you like one of the manufacturers that'd be willing to do make a personal stand and take your products out of those stores?
No, I wouldn't. Look.
Okay.
Again, it's kind of one of those cut your nose to spite your face situations, right? What I hope that eventually I can convince a consumer to smoke one of my products instead of one of those products. And that can't happen if my cigars aren't on the shelf side by side so that consumers can compare the two. Okay. And the other thing too is, and I think too,
True.
when you're the company that's in that position, you feel as though all the slings and arrows are being pointed at you. And they think that it's just big business trying to crush the little guy. But they really don't understand what's really actually happening, because a lot of these companies have the ability to bring new cigar smokers into the market, right? And they're connecting with consumers that like somebody like myself can't connect with, right? And ultimately, they're growing the pie. Now, some of the grandiose claims are over the top, but the reality is they are bringing in other people just the same way as Acid brought in other people. Drew Estate brought other people in. So they actually do help to grow the business, which is actually to the benefit of everybody. And I think that's something that they're not really comprehending from a strategic point of view. They think it's the big guys worrying about losing their share to this new up and coming thing. No, the reality is they really want you to be successful, because the more successful you are, the more cigar smokers you bring into the market. And when you bring more cigar smokers into the market, that's somebody that, guess what, the big companies will eventually get to sell cigars to. There is no reason why anybody at the top wants to squash the little hustle grinder person that's out there working their ass off and bringing new people into the marketplace. There really isn't. And I'm talking about the real players, the people that actually think about the industry and the strategy and how it really works. So I think it's just one of these things where you actually appreciate what they're doing. You just wish they'd be a little bit more cognizant about this FDA issue, because the FDA has been very clear. There are two things that they're really, really seriously focused on. The first one is the flavor element, okay? And the second one is this appeal to youth. They have been so crystal clear at everything they've said and everything they've written ever since when this all started in 2014. And I think you're foolish to not heed it. So the question is, okay, you want to be edgy, you want to be interesting, you want to be unique. That I completely get. How do you navigate this landscape in a way that you can achieve that and not dip into something that in any way could be attached to potentially a youth consumer? Okay. And it's not because we think you're trying to sell cigars to kids. We all know you're not. And we all know kids aren't buying your product. And we all know they're not going to the store to buy whatever that branded product is. We all know that. We agree with you. But that's not the problem we have. The problem that happens is when Dick Durbin slams that down on his desk and says, look at this. And then it's kind of like, well, that guy's this. And they go, okay, well, what about this? Well, that guy's that. Well, what about this? And once you get to what about this 3 times in a row, it then becomes a really difficult conversation, you know? And I think that's the thing that I wish they'd just take a little bit of a step back and realize that actually we're not against them. We love the fact that new people are coming into the business. We want new people to learn about cigars and the joy of cigars and the passion of cigars and the smoking of cigars. We just want you to think about how this potentially could be used against all of us, including you. Because it's you too. And that's the thing. We're just saying, hey, just take a little bit of a breath and look at it. But problem that you have is these conversations don't happen in real time. They don't happen face to face. They happen through shots and blogs and comments on podcasts and Facebook this and that. And it's not like people sit down and talk and everybody goes into their little tribe and they just start throwing rocks at one another. And I mean, it's very counterproductive. But I mean, I think it's a legit conversation, but I think it's been misconstrued by a lot of people.
And that's fair to say. I feel like you guys need your own round table, kind of like mafia style. You know, it doesn't exist, but you know, we won't speak of what doesn't exist, but where you guys need those face-to-face conversations amongst the different manufacturers to see how the industry can grow the industry in a positive manner.
I think regret.
Well, shit, everybody froze on this motherfucker right here, except for me and Casey.
It becomes too personal too quick, and that makes it even harder to have those conversations, right? You know, and it's just and it's a challenge for all of us.
Well, Steve, you said something earlier, a couple minutes back, that basically you just do shit better. So you might not know what the secret sauce is, but what do you see as far as your next target market?
I don't really have a next target market. I think right now, I think my primary focus, for at least particularly for this year more than any other, and probably going into next year, I need to figure out a way to catch up. And I need to figure out how I'm going to spend all this damn money that's necessary to catch up.
Well, you traditionally don't get involved with a lot of smaller events. I mean, there's a gazillion of them coming out this week, this weekend, that month. People going on tour and shit. What is the lines that you look at to make a decision on what you're going to be involved with or not?
So my problem is I just don't have time. If I was just the figurehead or the face, that would be one thing. But I am actually the guy buying the tobacco. I am the one that goes to Nicaragua all the time. I am the one. I do all the packaging design. I do all the intellectual. I do pretty much. I do everything but the sales and distribution of the product. And you could argue I'm involved in the sales and the fact that I do things like this, right? And I interact online. I mean, everything has a certain marketing sales component to it. But I'm not in the day-to-day grind of that. But everything else, my fingers are regretfully in. And it makes it really challenging for me to do events because there just isn't enough time in a calendar to do the events that you'd like to do. And I think that, and so for me, oftentimes it's a question of, do I have a gap in my calendar that I can dump something into? Okay. Like I had someone just recently request a podcast and it's like literally I had to schedule for November 11th. That's how stupid my calendar is, that like a guy that just wants to do a podcast with me, I'm telling him November 11th for God's sakes. And I think I think for me, it's more about just kind of getting a handle on what I got, because I got a good thing going right now and I just don't want to fuck it up. And it's really easy to fuck stuff up. You know what I mean? You can't rest on your laurels and just assume that things will be good. It's great that we're making more of everything.
Yeah.
But if I don't make it as good as it was before,
are you training anybody? Are you in a position where as you've brought these other people into your company, where you're able to delegate?
No,
some of that stuff.
Not on this part. Not on the cigar and tobacco side. And I'm not. And look, and it goes back to that FDA conversation. If things go the way I think they're going to go, I think this is going to become an impossible business 20 years in the future. And I mean, do you really want to put that? Do you want to put that anchor around somebody's neck for them to have to deal with everything that's going on? You know, it's hard to. I wouldn't want to get somebody. I mean, part of being an effective, if you're a good boss, a good leader, part of that's being a patriarch or a matriarch, right? And that means having a sense of compassion and wanting to protect the people that work with you and for you, right? You want them to do well in life. And I would have a very hard time bringing somebody in with the intention that they'll take over 20 years into the future, because I know how difficult it is now. What's it going to be like 20 years from now? You might be actually handing them the worst thing ever in the world. And I have to think about that. And I guarantee you, that is something that the generational family businesses, the ones that have yet sold, it's something that has to be crossing their minds continuously. They're like, hey, you know, we've been doing this for, you know, decades and decades and decades, and we love it, and it's our family. But do I really want my son or my daughter or my grandchildren? Is this actually the best legacy to pass down to them? You know, because it is going to become more and more challenging if there isn't some sort of carve out. Now, here's the funny part about it. 50 years from now, this will probably be a non-issue, because that's the way these things cycle. We go through these prohibition kind of segments for everything. Went through it with alcohol. We went through it with drugs. You go through it with, look, 1890, prostitution was fine, right? We go through a point where it isn't fine. I mean, now most of the world, they're licensing the sex trade, right? They're starting to regulate the sex trade. I mean, and I've always told people, look, there's 5 things that people are going to do. People are going to drink. People are going to smoke. People are going to gamble. People are going to do drugs. And people are going to fuck. These 5 things, it doesn't matter. People are doing these 5 things. It's just a question of how is it regulated and how business is done around it. Is it in the shadows? Is it illegal? Is it licensed? Is it taxed? How regulated it is? How not regulated it is? And that entirely has to do with the government and how the governments operate. And that's something that regretfully we as a people have no control over. Even in a democracy like ours, you still pretty much are at the whims of the bureaucracy above us. And that makes for a very challenging situation. So it's really hard to say, hey, let me take this person and groom them and say, hey, this is going to be yours 20 years from now, when I don't even know what the future is 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Oh.
Steve, I have a number for you. 100,000. 100,000.
100,000 ounces of gold, I'll take it. Yes.
100,000. You have smoked that many cigars.
Yeah, I probably smoke closer to 110, 115.
That's
100's a safe number that I feel confident saying out loud. And I probably clipped and lit and drew on easily 3 to 4 times more than that.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can see what a wonderful physical specimen it's made me. I don't quite recommend it. Yeah.
Hey, you could go on the Guy Fieri. You could go on the Guy Fieri diet. That man eats at, diners and drive-ins, and all of a sudden he's got muscles popping again.
You remember the guy? You remember the Man versus Food guy? Remember what was his name? Adam or something? Man, that guy. He got the like Saka size on that show, and he ended up having to quit it for his health.
Yeah, he got sick.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of cigars, and I think that's one of the things that also makes. I think it's one of the things that does differentiate us from other companies. I am the consumer. I mean, I don't care how many cigars you're buying as a consumer. I bought more. Okay, I was cigar crazy number one. I was the guy that wanted my picture with everybody, wanted to get so and so to sign my box. Would go to events. I was fanboy number one, but it was just before I became jaded like I am now. So I mean, I really, I think it's something that makes a real difference, in the fact that I am really the consumer.
And that makes a difference, Steve. Right. You know what a consumer wants. And I think, and you said this in the beginning, that you create your cigar for you. Yeah. And overall, that's what the consumer wants. Every cigar that you've made has been just amazing. It's been delicious.
I don't know about amazing. What I will say is every cigar I've made has been really high quality in the genre. And I think the question for you as a consumer, do you like that taste profile or do you not like that taste profile? But there's never been anything that we have made that has been of a lower grade or a lesser standard. It's a question of, hey, I smoked an aromatic number one. It drew well, constructed well, but that flavor profile isn't for me. Oh, I smoked Mi Querida. I like it, but I like Tricky Traca better because it's more peppery. Sobremesa Brulee, hey, it's just too mild for me. It doesn't work for me. So what I try to do is I try to make different expressions. A lot of makers, they have kind of a style that is almost locked into a certain flavor profile and a certain strength level. And I have the capacity to work outside of that. Plus also I smoke all of it. Like I'm smoking a Sobremesa Brulee Blue now, right? I can pick any cigar out of the humidor. I mean, I got my brand new Paladin de Saka $30 cigar here. I could have picked that one up instead of this one, but this is the one I felt like smoking. And so, I mean, I, as a consumer, I go all over the map. And I think there's a lot of consumers that, depending on their mood, depending on their moment, they want different things. Now, most consumers, there are a lot of consumers that are locked in. They have a certain strength, certain color wrapper, and a certain size, and that's all they'll ever try and ever smoke. Honestly, that guy is probably not going to become a Dunbarton customer because that guy probably doesn't have enough experience. For me, my best customers are the women and the men that, you know what? Let's throw the transgens in there too, because I want them also. You too, guys. I'll take all the theys also. I think the more experience they have, the more cigars they've smoked, that they can actually tell the difference and they can discern, and they become more comfortable with their palates and what they like and what they don't like and why they like it and why they don't like it. That's actually ultimately probably my best customer. You know, I find that those are the consumers that we really, really do well with. And look, and that's a tremendous honor, because then you're talking about people that actually are really into cigars and are really familiar with cigars. And for them to now, you know, add your brand to their rotation, that's a tremendous, it's tremendously rewarding.
Hey, Steve, you know, you mentioned something in regards to the color and strength or what have you. And, you know, I know you guys have some banter going back and forth every once in a while, a lot of love and respect. You know, do you think that you had any impact on the development of what Skip creates from time to time?
I don't know about that. I mean, that's a question for Skip, isn't it? But let me say this. I take inspiration from the work of others. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I do my own thing, but I also admire when I see stuff and I go, oh, that's genius, or wow, that's really impressive, or that's really good. So I have to assume that if I feel that way, I think probably most of us in the business feel that way, you know? So, I mean, you're not oblivious to it, but I mean, I don't know particularly about that particular question, how to answer it. Only he could answer that question.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, there's so many freaking cigars out there. I remember one time I was talking to Rick Rodriguez, and he was telling me, he's like, bruh, because I was asking him how he felt about, you know, all these other people just coming out with a cigar, throwing a band on, yada, yada. We know that song and dance. He said, look, Michael, he said, think about all the cigars in the world. He says, okay, there are more cigars that are in the cigar graveyard than there are in the world active right now. So with that said, you know, I mean, how many more freaking blends can people create? I mean, that haven't already been done.
Yeah, but part of the problem that you have is we're in a society that's always looking for the next greatest thing, right? And look, it's human nature, like what's new, what's next. I'm guilty of it too. The other thing that we're in an environment that's particularly hyperdrive now is with this social media and with all the individual media blogs. It isn't sexy talking about a Arturo Fuente Hemingway signature. It rarely gets a mention. It rarely gets a photo. It rarely gets anything, right? But the reality is, it's still to this day one of the absolute finest Cameroon cigars that have ever been made. And guess what? It still sells really, really well. I think the thing that a lot of small companies are kind of missing the boat on is they're just in such a cash crunch situation that if you just make something new, even if it isn't really special, you know that you're going to sell a certain amount of it just based on its newness. And even if it just dies a year or two later, well, you're just going to make two other things to fill in those holes. The problem is that puts you on the hamster wheel of constantly having to generate. And when you look at the brands that are really, truly long-term successful, they're long-term successful because they've managed to make a very consistent product that a certain group of customers really love. Oliva V's, Arturo Fuente, Padron, whatnot. And so the real way to be ultimately successful in our business is to make a super quality product that you can do very consistently and stay the course. The problem is the market does not reward you in the short term. It actually punishes you for trying to take that approach. And it's a very expensive approach, but it is the one that 10, 15, 20 years in the future, it is the one that ultimately pays off. And just think about it. How many consumers do we all know? They go into a cigar store and they just go buy Oliva V's, or they just go buy Opus X, or they just go buy Padron 1926s. They walk by everything else. They don't even look at it. They don't care.
Yeah.
They come to the counter with their box of 1926. It's $525, and they don't blink, and they buy it. And why that is because they're at a certain point in their life where they picked their brand, what they like. And I'm kind of at that point in my life. If no one ever made another craft bourbon, I'd be fine. You know what I mean? I'm done with all the craft beers. I'm just done trying all of these different things. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I have to give everybody a fair chance and a try and chase the next thing. I know the things that I like, and I know the things that I don't like. And at this stage of my life, it's really rare for something to enter my rotation. Now, that's a terrible thing for me to say aloud as a guy that's making a new cigar company with new brands that I'm hoping that consumers will give a shot towards. But I'm not really trying to get the Opus guy or the Padron guy or the Davidoff guy of today. They've earned those guys. They've got those guys. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a cigar that's of that quality and that caliber for the generation that's beneath them. Or beneath is the wrong way to say it, but that are younger, okay, that hasn't decided yet, that's still out there dancing with all the girls, trying to figure out what they like and what they don't like. They're going to pick some company to become a lifelong consumer of. Okay, but we don't know what that company is going to be. It could be Aromacraft, it could be Foundation, it could be Dunbarton, it could be Christoph, it could be Southern Draw. But one of these companies is going to become that next company.
Right.
And that's what I focus on, is that. I don't focus on today's sales as much as I focus on, am I making something that has the potential to become what I call multi-generational, something that's actually worthy of still being on the shelves 20 years later, and somebody actually saying, this is my cigar. I love this cigar. I smoke this cigar every single day. You're not going to get a customer that only smokes one brand, okay? But if you can get a customer that you're part of their regular rotation all the time, you're in those 3 or 4 brands that they always grab and they always smoke, that's the win that you're shooting for.
Well, you're in my rotation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And look, and as we
You've
grow,
been in mine.
I hear that more and more by a lot of customers, and that's what I'm doing. And the thing is, you can't market your way to that. You can market your way to get someone to try something, but in the end, the cigar is going to have to speak for itself. The product is going to have to be good in order for you to actually keep and earn that spot, because there will always be 1,000 other choices, and just as I said last year, 900 new ones that get added to the heap, and you got to compete with every single one of them all the time. And that's the most difficult challenge, and it's the one where small companies, the deck is really stacked against them, because it's really hard to make an uber consistent product on a regular continual basis and to be able to afford the investment required to do that as a small company when you're just trying to basically live month to month to month to keep the doors open.
Exactly. Yeah, that is, I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal. So let's go to.
I think one of the strengths. I think one of the strengths of Dunbarton, though, is because of the quality of the cigar, and you have what's deemed maybe like the standards, the Sober Mesa, things like that, and people count on that, and then you change it up and you add like the Navy, or you add the Tricky Trotta. Right. So knowing that I feel like as a consumer, I'm willing to try those things based on what I already like from the company.
And you're right.
I think sometimes with some of the companies,
you're extended a lot of blind faith. But when you're extended that blind faith, it means you have to actually work double hard to make sure that the customer's satisfied. Because if they're going out of their way to buy a Red Meat Lovers or a U-Boat or a Don Derma from a retailer that they normally wouldn't do business with, and they're buying that cigar blind, they've never tasted it before, I have the responsibility that cigar be really unique and exceptional. Now, it may not suit their flavor profile, but I can't just use that as an opportunity to make some quick, easy cash. Oh, heck, if I make 500 frog juices, I know I'm instantly going to sell those out in 24 hours, right? Yeah, it's nice, but if the frog juices aren't amazing, is it really worth the fact that I got to sell an extra 500 or 1,000 boxes of cigars? It's actually hurts the company is what ultimately ends up happening. And I think you see that with a lot of the smaller companies. They get into the limited release game and they look at it as a way to make easy cash. And what really they should be looking at it as a marketing opportunity with a huge downside, because if they don't hit it out of the park, it actually hurts their brand. It actually hurts their customer, and it hurts their business, and it actually hurts them with their customer that's their most loyal customer, the customer who likes your products enough that they would go out of their way to buy something that they've never tasted for some retailer that they never would do business with. You know what I mean? So I think there's actually an extra obligation for those things to be exceptional. And then the other thing on part of that is a lot of times when the companies get into that mode, because the cash flow is so easy from those little simple exclusives and limiteds and whatnot, they really start to neglect their core product. And the reality is your core product should not be treated as a lesser. I don't put more work goes into Sobra Mesa and Mike Rita and Sin Compromiso than even all of the limited special stuff. That's a much harder task to keep the tobaccos necessary, all the things that we're working on simultaneously to keep those blends consistent so the consumer gets the same experience when they buy the box time in and time out. And I think for a lot of companies, they ignore the core because the core is very hard to grow. The core is really, really, really tough because you don't get that sexiness of the new, fresh, exclusive, limited, boom, boom, boom. But in the end, that's where you make your money. You make your money on the core. And that's what you need to focus on, because then it gives you the capacity to do those special little projects, that the fringes and the little cherries on top here and there. You know what I mean? It's great to be able to make a Paladin de Saka, a $30 stronger Sin Compromiso, a different technique in the bunching, a different technique in the pressing, aging them a full year. But in the end, it's meant to serve the interest of Sin Compromiso, to keep Sin Compromiso in the forefront as a brand, to provide the Sin Compromiso customer who's regularly smoking my $15 to $18 Sin a cigar that, hey, when he wants something really special to celebrate, well, guess what? Here's something that you can smoke that's special, so that you don't buy a Davidoff whatever, or you don't buy an Opus whatever, or you don't buy a Padron 40th. I'm trying to give the Sin guy something that's extra special and extra juicy for him, the opportunity. I don't expect to sell billions of Sin Compromiso Paladin de Sakas. And honestly, I really can't if I got to age the damn things a year anyways. There's always this extra hurdle that you got to overcome. It's just meant to be the cherry. It's not meant to be the sundae.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Steve. So we're going a little bit over the 2 hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to open it up a little bit more for some questions. And one of the ones that Chris had earlier in the show, he's like, "How's your book going? So you're working on a book?"
Yeah, I should never mention that out loud. I'm working on a dumb book. It's a total gimmick. It's I say so much stupid shit, and some of it's actually funny occasionally, and some of it's actually insightful. So now when I say something stupid, I just hit the voice memo on my phone and I repeat it. And at some point, I'm going to put a book together of just these kind of Saka-isms, just the stupid shit I said over the last 20 years. And it's a total waste of time, total nothing. But I'll bundle it with a special cigar, and I already know what I want to call it. And it's kind of cheeky, and I like things that are a little cheeky when it comes to it. It's kind of funny. I like the cheekiness stuff for the limited stuff, but I don't like it for the core stuff. I want the core stuff to be classy and all the time, but I can do the "Now Leave Me the Hell Alone," and I can do, the frog juice, and I can do, those type of weird things when it's the small stuff. And this is just a little quirky small thing that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I think it would be funny if it came with a book accompanied with it.
That's good. Okay, so for you guys that are watching right now,
where did the name Frog Juice come from?
So originally when I made Frog Juice, it still is Jeff at Riverside. And Jeff lives, his store is just south of Louisville. He's across the border, right? Because Louisville, Kentucky is right across from, I guess that's Indiana, right? And he's on the Riverside of it. We were going to do an event for Kentucky Derby. And I was trying to come up with a quirky name. And I wanted it to be associated with a Kentucky Derby, but I didn't want it to be so. I didn't want it to be cliche. So frog juice is what they call the drugs that they illegally dope racing horses with. They call it frog juice.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's where it comes from. It's
Okay.
It's kind of the slang name for the drugs that they use to dope racing horses.
Gotcha. And I know we were taking some questions from the viewers. We've got Monteith, we've got Scully asking, what is your take on CRA?
I'm probably a bit more generous than a lot of other people are. I think that first up, they have an absolutely impossible task, right? I mean, it's really a difficult task. And
Indeed.
we're in an industry that has many different factions, and it's impossible to meet everyone's needs. So no matter what the CRA does, it will never satisfy all of their constituents. And it's really easy to be critical, but I also know that 10 years ago, we had no interaction with Congress, no interaction with the Senate, and they have really managed to take very little money in the grand scheme of things. I know we talk about like all the money we give them is so absurd, blah, 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 look what they spent. But in the terms of lobbying dollars, of dealing with the federal government, it is literally a drop in the bucket. And they have really managed to squeeze so much of the limited resources that they have had that we're actually at the table and we are having the conversations. And you still see senators regularly call out on our behalf for the premium handmade cigar industry. And they take our meetings, even though we're not the gun people, we're not the oil people, we're not the alcohol people, we're not the the Monsanto, is that a company? The food people of the world. And the fact that they've managed to weasel us into the position where we've actually been relevant, even though we haven't gotten everything we wanted, we've gotten quite a bit. And it's put a lot of pressure. And so even though I know it's very easy to shoot them with arrows and daggers and talk about all their faults and all the things they could be doing, I personally think it's really admirable what they have accomplished. And the other thing that I have to say is you don't see me volunteering to do it, right? I mean, I send them my money. I actively engage when they ask me to actively engage, but it isn't like I'm saying, hey, guess what? I'm moving to DC and I'm taking this shit over. You know what I mean? That's one of the things I always find really difficult when I hear critics. I mean, okay, it's easy to be a critic. What are you going to do to make it better? Are you going to commit your time? Are you going to commit your dollars? Are you going to be, you know what I mean? And people are quick to judge, but they ain't quick to help out. They're just quick to talk. And so even though it's not perfect, and even though they've made a lot of things that I think mistakes along the way, I think what they've managed to accomplish is really quite mind-blowing when you give the scope of the level that they're trying to play at with so little resources, and really protecting a constituency that the government doesn't give a fuck about. Because the truth is, most people that consume tobacco products, they wish they wouldn't consume tobacco products, right? The only people that are happy are the cigar smokers and the pipe people, right? Most people, if you're a cigarette smoker, by the time you hit your 30s, 35, you're like, man, I got to get off these. You know what I mean? These aren't good for me. You don't even want to be a customer anymore. You're just, because you have your nicotine addiction, you have to be a customer. And that makes it really challenging because we're a tiny constituency.
He said, thank you. Scully said, I agree, and thank you, sir. So we're rounding out this episode. We have one more question from Justin Ross. Is there a way you could make it worth it to deal with more Canadian retailers?
No, because you live in Canada and you have a messed up government. And it's not my fault that you have a bad government. And guess what? Our government's probably going to be where your government is. Give us another 20 years. But I mean, you guys have ridiculous locked-in distributions. You have egregious taxes. You have a tremendous amount of paperwork. And now you have plain packaging coming to effect. So now I've got to package my goods differently just to sell them into Canada and not make as much money and do more work for this luxury. I'm sorry. I love you, Canadians, but you're fucked. You live in a country with a fucked up government. And this is the reason why, look, I say it's just the same way as in the early 90s. If I want to smoke Cubans, I bought them from overseas and I got them shipped, and I hope customs didn't snag the package, right? And that's kind of a game that most Canadians play now too. Or they have a P.O. box on the U.S. side, or they drive across the border to like an Indian reservation like Smokin' Joe's in Buffalo, and they buy their cigars and they mule them across the border for them and their friends. I mean, so it isn't like Canadians aren't smoking my cigars. The problem is I would have to jump through so many hoops in order to get my cigars in Canada. And guess what ends up happening? You guys take a cigar, a Sin Compromiso in Canada, an $18 cigar in the United States, that becomes a $85, $90 cigar in Canada, courtesy of your government. How many Sin Compromisos do you think I'm possibly going to sell in Canada when they cost $90 a piece? So my thing is, I just say to Canadians, hey, just find your way to mule them in, because your government's not going to really ever allow it to happen. So for me, and look, I have this same attitude about a lot of states in our country. And this is a problem that some retailers have with me, is that there's certain states that are a pain in the ass to do business with because of their tax structure. And I just choose to kind of ignore them. Eventually the company will get to a size where I'll say, hey, I need to focus on how to get into this state because I need this to grow my business. But that isn't the case now. So why am I going to climb this crazy mountain that you guys have put up to try to sell cigars into a state that ultimately most of the consumers aren't even going to buy the cigars in the state? They visit the lounges, they smoke one or two maybe, and then eventually they always buy them online anyways.
Yeah.
You know, maybe things will change when we start to see OTP taxes collected across the board from all of the online brokers. But guess what will happen then? All of these things that these governments are passing, it's going to affect the Cigars International. It's going to affect the Famous. It's going to affect the JR Cigars of the world. But they're putting dollar threshold caps of like $250,000 a year into the state. Well, guess what that means? It means that the Two Guys of the world, the Smoke-Ins of the world, and the Coronas, they'll keep selling into the state, right? They will hit that number. And guess what? Even if they hit that number, they'll get to the month of October. So guess what? We don't ship any more cigars to this state for the rest of the year. Come back and visit us on January 1st. You know, and that's the problem with all of these individual states going willy-nilly all on their own, trying to decide. And regretfully, yeah, it hurts you as a consumer in the state. But I can't solve your problems. And I'm at the whim of the government, right? And I just have to deal with the cards that are dealt. And right now, it ain't worth shuffling to deal with places like Canada. It just simply isn't.
Wow. So we have one more question. How come Steve never has a half-smoked cigar?
Because I smoke Dunbarton, and they're worth smoking all the way to the bottom. Truth is, no, I do actually. I'm the worst. I smoke, like, I can't get in my car and not smoke. So even if I have like 10 minutes and I'm going to someplace where I can't smoke, I'll waste the cigar. I'll smoke 10 minutes of it. And when I get there, I'll pitch it out the door. Also, if I don't like a cigar right away, I don't smoke it. Like I'm not one of those people that feels like I have to give it a fair opportunity or a chance. I mean, why do I owe this cigar 2 hours of my life to not enjoy it?
Right.
So if I spark something up and in the first half inch I ain't feeling it, I'm dumping it. That's just all there is. I'll pick up another cigar. Now, granted, it helps that a lot of these cigars I'm not paying for anymore. Well, I'm paying for my cigars, obviously, still. But I mean, I get a lot of cigars given to me, gifted to me. So that makes a difference. But it goes back to the earlier conversation. I mean, money, luckily for me, has never been the concern when it comes to cigars. So if I don't like something, I don't smoke it. I don't hang out hoping it gets better.
No. So, ladies, did you ask all
I
your
can
questions?
relate. I've left some almost. We did. I can relate to Steve though, because I've left many damn near full cigars in an ashtray.
Now I'll tell you what I do though, Casey.
Yeah.
If I'm in a public place, I always do the courtesy of taking the band off it and throwing the band in another ashtray or in the garbage can. Because what my personal opinion is about that cigar, I don't want to reflect poorly on the manufacturer of that cigar. I've got no ill will. You know what I mean? So I think as a consumer,
Mhm.
okay, I think it's just a courtesy thing to do
Mhm.
is to pull the ring off of something I like. You know,
Definitely
I
so.
That's a good idea.
You know, it's just a polite thing to do.
I
But
agree.
yeah, I think we've asked all the
It is.
questions.
Do we have any more questions?
No, that's it. I went through
Yeah, we've
it.
asked all of ours.
Okay. Steve, we went over our time limit with you. But oh my gosh. Thank you. And I told you this in my email.
You gave us like a whole extra hour.
Yes. Thank you so much for
Thank
making
you.
time for us.
Oh no,
knowing
ladies,
that
I appreciate it. Thank you
don't
very
have any
much.
openings until November. So we're really grateful for that.
Yeah.
Arlene, I know you have one more question for Steve though.
I did.
His last words. His last words.
We always we are part of our closure. We always want to leave our viewers with lasting thoughts and or affirmations. So
Oh my God.
That's Arlene's thing.
and you can curse. You can curse. So leave us with your lasting words, Steve.
You would think for someone that talks as much as me,
They can
that
go
would
right
be
into your
difficult.
book.
But I never get to the last words. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, I think one of the things that I think is really important as a cigar smoker is to be a little bit more inward with your thoughts. I mean, really kind of focus and figure out what you like, because everybody is trying to grab your attention and everybody's trying to tell you what you should smoke and how you should smoke it. And in the end, I mean, the thing about cigars that makes them special is the fact that they provide you enjoyment and relaxation and camaraderie, and also they provide comfort in moments of solace, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I think you sometimes just need to just go back to a cigar is just a cigar and just let it be and enjoy the moments with it. Don't get so tangled up. Don't let it become anal. Don't let it become, and look, and I can say this as being someone that's very active in the business, there are moments where I get very jaded. And look, when you get to the point that you're jaded, it takes away from the thing that brought you to it in the first place. So I find myself sometimes just having to step back, and I think it's okay, and I also think it's okay that you don't know everything, and that you don't pretend you know everything, and I think it's okay that if you find one or two things you really love, that you don't feel pressured to try new stuff, even though I'm trying to sell you new stuff. I mean, I don't think there's any sin in that. I think the best way to enjoy cigars is to make the experience your own and not make the experience to satisfy somebody else.
That's beautiful.
I needed that.
Yeah.
It is.
Actually, I needed that too. Yeah. I needed that. Thank you.
I think more and more we need that constant reminder, because we just get so busy with all the hustle and bustle of life, and especially in the cigar community too, chasing after that one. But now I'm just really learning how to enjoy, like you said, Steve, just my private time with my favorite cigar, and just my backyard is enough.
Not everything has to be an Instagram moment.
That's right.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
So, wow, this has been amazing.
Steve, it has been a pleasure.
It
It's been
has.
an absolute pleasure talking to you, ladies.
Thank
It's
you.
been such
so
a
much.
privilege with you.
And I know that when you
Thank you so much. Yeah, we learned a lot.
I know that when you posted your Facebook page regarding this event today, you didn't know what the topic was.
Right. And for the record, I've never been a rodeo clown. That was a total lie and a tease. Yeah, there's no way.
I was going to ask you,
I got more brains than
you have a picture?
That's a different level of stupid shit, right? That comes with a broken back kind of stuff. Right?
Oh
That's what we call in the biz a tease. But it's really a lie. That's what it was. It was just an outright lie. Yeah.
Well, we all thank you so much. Michael actually had to go down and take the dog downstairs. So we all say thank you, Arlene, Casey.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
All right, guys. You have a great time.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Much love to you.
Absolutely.
And say good to Cindy for us.
I get you a kiss.
We'll see you out there.
Thank you to all our viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for and all of Steve's followers that are out there. Thank you for watching our show for the first time. We really appreciate you. So y'all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Steve, thank you. Arlene and Casey, thank you so much.
Steve, see you at the chateau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my invite. I gotta
See
check
you.
my phone.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna end it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Bye, everybody.